I'd rather a few points of street airports.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Somerset North Planning Committee. My name is Councillor Matt Martin. I'm Vice Chair of the committee, and I'm taking this meeting today in place of our Chair, Kathy Pearce, who is away at the moment. Some housekeeping notes with regard to fire drills. There's no fire drill planned for today, so if there is an alarm sounded, please follow the officers through the doors to the exit outside our meeting places in the square outside there. Toilets are in the foyer for public use. And do we have water? No, we don't have water today, but if you need some, we can arrange that. Thank you. This is a hybrid meeting, which means that committee members are present in Bridgewater House and the meeting is also available online via Teams. Please note that the meeting is being recorded. Can I remind all those in the room to turn off your mobile phones or put them on silent or airplane mode? And can those joining us online please turn off your cameras and microphones so that the meeting is not disturbed? I will now introduce those taking part in the committee today. To my left and right are officers from our Legal and Democratic Services teams and the planning officers to my further right who will present the actual applications. On the wings of the tables, and including myself, are the councillors who will debate and decide on the applications as they come up. The format will be as per the published agenda, and a copy of the officer reports can be found on the council's website. Each application will be taken in turn. Officers will outline each application, followed by public speaking time. Only members of the public who have registered to speak can make a representation on each application. Councillors around the table will then debate and decide on each application. During the debate, there will be a proposer and a seconder for a resolution. Members will vote on the proposal, and only members who have been present throughout the application will be able to vote. The voting options are for, against, abstain, or defer. Votes will be counted and the result announced. And with that, can I ask for apologies for absence today?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from absence from Councillor Bob Bilmer with Councillor Peter Clayton substitute for him, Councillor Pauline Ham, Councillor Hilary Bruce, and Councillor Jill Slocum. Councillor Pauline Ham and Councillor Jill Slocum should be joining us online.
Thank you very much. Regarding the minutes from the previous meeting, can I take it that we have all had a good opportunity to review the minutes, and are you happy for me to sign the document as we had a proposal from Councillor Hendry and seconded by Councillor Grimes that they are good? I shall sign those in just a moment. Thank you. Councillor Bruce has come to see us. Excellent. Can I ask, please, for any declarations of interest regarding today's meeting? Would you like to tell the assembled about declarations of interest? What do you do? Are there any declarations of interest? No, from this side? Oh, Alan. Councillor Brand.
Member of the Town Council, but took no part in any of the consultation.
Very good, thank you. And Councillor Bruce.
Thank you. Apologies, chairs of the committee, for being late. I believe Park Drainage Board may be involved as a consultee on one of the items.
Park Drainage Board.
I'm a member of the Park Drainage Board.
Okay.
I haven't taken part in any discussions with them about it.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
And Councillor Smedley.
It's exactly the same regarding Bridgewater Town Council and the item Bridgewater area later.
Very good, thank you very much. Okay. We are on to item 4 on the published agenda, which is public question time. Now, we don't have any registered speakers for public question time. That doesn't respond directly to the items. As the items come up, I will ask you to come to the table at the front and speak for each item. The public question time is for a global thing. So nothing registered for that. Oh, Councillor Slocum online, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to declare an interest, please. I know I'm not in the room, but I've asked if I could speak. I rang Lee this morning, and I'm declaring an interest on planning application 0825 0086. I'm predetermined on that application, and I wish to speak at that appropriate time. I've asked if that could be possible. Thank you.
This is item 8. Right, okay. Now, are you registered to speak? Yeah, we're going to speak about that one, aren't we? Okay, thank you, councillor Slocum.
Thank you.
Where was I? Good question, so I know we've done that. Okay. And that leads us on, if there are no further questions. No. So we can go straight on to the next item, which is item 5 on my agenda, which is planning application 542521, land to the north of Meadow Farm, the Causeway, Will Abbington, Bridgewater, Somerset. Who's taking this one today, please? Dean, thank you. Just waiting for the presentation to come up.
So this is an application, so site land to the north of Meadow Farm, the Causeway. It's for the construction and operation of what's called a synchronous condenser, with associated ancillary infrastructure, buildings, access, landscaping. I'll talk through exactly what a synchronous condenser is. It's going to be the first of 2 applications of this nature, both on the north side of Will Abbington, which is relevant, and I'll talk through also why we're getting 2 applications have come in. It's at the committee because the recommendation is contrary to the views of the Parish Council. I also just want to let members know that there was an update sheet which was circulated yesterday evening with some additional commentary, and particularly some additional conditions that have been recommended, and I'll talk through those relevant bits when we get to the sections in the report. So just briefly on what is a synchronous condenser, because it'll be new to many people. So they are effectively a large rotating machine that helps to stabilize the electricity grid. So they're not power plants, they don't generate power in themselves, but they provide what is called stability services that helps regulate the grid, regulate voltages, and they provide support to the grid as more and more renewable electricity is brought online. They do look and function in similar to a traditional power turbine building. So this is just an example, sort of stock photo that represents sort of the rotating machinery that you get inside these buildings. Effectively, it's housed in the building on the site. And then in terms of why the grid needs them, so as I said, it does help to regulate fluctuations in energy, given the reliance on increased wind and solar. It can also help deal with faults or sudden surges within the grid, or help prevent blackouts. So we had examples in Spain and Portugal some time ago, some people will recall. And it also overall ensures sort of more stable electricity supply for the region. So these applications are coming forward as part of a long-term tender that's being by the National Energy System Operator, so NESO. So there's effectively a regulatory body under the government. So that body is responsible for moving electricity around the country, and it is currently tendering for another round of these energy stabilising infrastructure. So this isn't the only site; there are the other sites in the country, and this isn't. Neither is this the first round that they've done it. So what's particularly relevant here is that a bay has been reserved at a new substation, which is going to be constructed on the edge of the gravity site. So just where my cursor is here, this is the gravity site, the large enterprise zone. Will Abbington is here, and on the very edge of the gravity site, it will be a new substation to be constructed. So that has a bay within it reserved for a stability system connection. The tenders, as I understand it, to NESO are going to be submitted in June 2026. So, as we speak. And we've had 2 planning applications submitted on 2 separate sites in Will Abbington, each proposing a synchronous condenser by 2 different providers. It's important to say that only one of those is going to be approved by NESO.
So there will only ultimately be one that will be built out, and only one is going to win the tender. But we've got two competing applications in front of us today. So just in terms of locating those two sites, so the first application, the one I'm going to talk through now, is from Conrad Energy. So that's number one. That's just on the right-hand side of the B3141 that runs north out of Woolhampton. And then after we'll come to the Welsh Power application, which is on the west side here. And just for context, this is the site of the proposed substation. So this shows the outline of the application from Conrad Energy. So the red line goes around this land here. It's approximately 5 hectare site. And this this is the site plan. So it shows the proposed development. So in the centre, you have on this site, you have 2 buildings, each housing the synchronous condensers located broadly within the middle of the site. On the northern side, you have ancillary equipment and infrastructure located primarily externally. You're going to have a new vehicle access formed on the site's western boundary onto the E3141. There will be an emergency access which will come south from the site and emerge an existing access on Meadow Farm. As I said, that's very much a secondary form of access. And then in terms of the elevation drawings about what these proposals are going to look like, so you can see here, primarily you've got these 2 buildings in corrugated metal, and then the ancillary infrastructure, so the transformers and other related infrastructure, largely located on the northern side. So the buildings in this case are going to be 15.3 metres in height, and they're about 46 metres in length. And then just coming on to what are going to be the main planning considerations for this and the other applications. So effectively, principal development and the need for facility, design and visual impact, flood risk and drainage, highways, community, ecology. So just in terms of principle, so this is a countryside location, so we're outside any defined settlement boundaries. Development in countryside locations is appropriately controlled. So the Sedgemoor local plan has positive policies that support projects that maximise energy from renewable sources. And the local plan effectively says that proposals in countryside locations can be acceptable where there is a need to be in a countryside location and subject to consideration of the site-specific impacts. There are also national policy statements on energy set out by government, which set out the need to modernise the electricity grid with increased reliance on renewable energy sources. And that's a material consideration that needs to be taken into account. In terms of the locational elements, as I've highlighted, that new substation is to be constructed at the gravity site. And in this case, it's about 500 metres to the northwest of the site. And that has a connection bay reserved for this type of stabilisation project. The NESO tender identifies Woolhampton as a primary point of connection to the grid. So in conclusion, the proposal does respond to an identified national and local need in terms of planning policy. There is a location requirement to be in proximity to the proposed gravity substation, and therefore, subject to consideration of the impacts, which I'll come on to, the principle of the development, in our view, would be acceptable. So just in terms of visual impact, just to get a sense of the site. So these couple of photos are taken from the top. So this is the proposed development site in here. So you've got photos looking back across the site. So that's the top one there, looking across this top boundary. This is the roadside boundary here. And then looking back down across the site. So that's the road down here. So you can see this is not a designated landscape, but it is very much a within a typical Levels and Moors landscape. So it's a very flat landscape, typical of the Levels and Moors, which is separated by greens and hedgerows. The landform sort of rises up as you get closer to the village, further to the south, but it is flat, reasonably open given given the nature of the boundary. So there's more established boundary planting on the northern side here. And again, just looking top photos, looking sort of from a more southerly location, so looking back across the site from the road, you can see the nature of the landscape. It's open. There's some other infrastructure within the landscape. There are some electricity pylons. Largely an undeveloped landscape further to the north. If you do look over to the west, which I don't have a photo of in this case, but you can see the gravity site under construction. And then the bottom site is more from the very south, so just in amongst sort of the last hill form of the village. So you come down the hill, the road bends around to the left, and you see that the site is sort of beyond here. So there's some more screening down the bottom end before it comes around the corner, and then it opens up slightly further. And then, so there, in terms of visual impact, the plan here is the proposed site planning, including landscaping proposed. So there's quite substantial new planting proposed. So we've got new hedgerow planting around the visibility displays, behind the visibility displays at the new point of access. We've got new hedgerow planting along the eastern boundary, located along here and here. And then there is there's tree planting and a strong tree belt on a bund located on the southwestern corner of the site. That's very much informed by discussions that the applicant had with the council's landscape officer in terms of providing a strong belt of landscape mitigation in some of the principal parts in terms of the approach from the village. So through the discussions with the council landscape officer, those changes were made, and the scheme therefore resulted in them having their acceptance. They've recommended some conditions, but overall they were accepting in terms of the landscape mitigation that have been put in place. With regard to impacts on landscape character, I think it's reasonable for us to conclude that given the scale and height of these buildings, that there is going to be some form of harm. It is going to introduce quite substantial built form into what is quite an open rural landscape at the edge of the village. So there's going to be some noticeable and permanent changes to the immediate character of that area. Now, the landscaping that's been proposed as part of the scheme will assist integration of the proposal over time, but there will be some adverse effects on local character. And that is harm that needs to be weighed in the planning balance when considering the application. So in terms of flood risk and drainage, so the site here shows the proposed surface water drainage strategy, which incorporates attenuation, so holding water on site prior to discharge to local water courses. So this is a site that is in flood zone 3, which is the area of high flood risk, as is much of the land on the north side of Woolabington. Officers were satisfied, so we've been through in terms of applying the sequential tests that, given the proximity to the gravity substation, the need for it to be located in the proximity to that, and the surrounding flood zone 3 designation, that sequentially this is a suitable site. There's been significant input from the Environment Agency, the Lee Local Flood Authority, and the IDB, the Drainage Board, in terms of the specific impacts. And assessing the detail of the drainage strategy and their flood mitigation measures. And that's resulted in a number of conditions being proposed, and none of those organisations having any current objection. So there are conditions proposed in terms of flood mitigation, some land raising, 40-year design life review, and submission of the detailed surface water drainage scheme and maintenance details. So subject to a number of conditions which are set out in the report, plus one additional drainage condition which is set out in the update sheet which went forward. The consultees are satisfied that in terms of flood risk and drainage, that the scheme is satisfactory. Then in terms of highways impacts, so as I've mentioned, there are two accesses. There's the primary one, which will be a new access, which will be formed under B3141, and then we have a secondary emergency access here. So in terms of the impacts on the network, these condensers will operate largely on an unmanned basis. So once they're operational, they won't need people typically to be there. There will be maintenance trips per month for sort of general operations, but that's sort of expected to be about 15 vehicle trips per month. So a level that would of operational traffic, which would be considered to be minimal. Construction phase is going to have a bigger impact. So the construction phase of this project is anticipated to last for 24 months. And within that, there was a peak of about 20 weeks when vehicle movements are anticipated to be up to 82-way HGV vehicle movements per day. So that is a notable increase in traffic that is going to be temporary, but nonetheless it's going to be a notable increase in traffic. Now, construction HGV traffic is identified to route via the strategic highway network and is identified in the submitted documents to approach the site from the north, which partly is to avoid going through Wolverhampton and avoid a weight restriction which currently exists through Wolverhampton, including some of the large vehicles. Those details have been reviewed by the Highway Authority, and they've reviewed these impact assessments have been provided, and they've confirmed that those details are acceptable. They do note that there is going to be a higher impact during the peak construction phases, and their comments are very much that that's noted, but it is temporary in nature. They want to see conditions to secure matters such as visibility displays, traffic management measures. There'll be need for things like use of banksmen when any larger vehicles are approaching to make sure they can safely manoeuvre in and out of the site. All measures that they are satisfied can be controlled through construction management plans. So they aren't objecting, and they're saying the scheme is considered acceptable on highways grounds. And then in terms of amenity impacts, the buildings that house the equipment over 100 metres from the nearest properties within the edge of Wolverhampton. So the council's environmental health officers have been heavily involved in the green and noise mitigation scheme to protect the immunity of residents. Ultimately, these are bits of equipment that are operating, and there is noise potential. They've agreed a method of noise mitigation which will achieve noise levels no greater than existing background levels. So that will be secured by a condition. And then they are content to see, or they wish to see, other controls in the form of measures to protect residents during construction, impacts from lighting and land contamination to be secured by conditions. So overall, it has their satisfaction subject to imposition of those conditions. Finally, I'll come on to ecological impact. So the update sheet which went around provided sets out the latest position regarding ecology. Effectively, we were still having to satisfy the ecologists in terms of the mandatory provision to provide these 10% biodiversity net gain, and the council's ecologists had requested additional information to be satisfied that could be achieved. That's come through. It can be achieved inside. The applicants have had to change effectively the makeup of how that's provided on site in terms of hedgerow planting and enhancement, watercourse enhancement. It will require them to purchase some offsite credits to meet their mandatory 10%. So our ecologists have removed their objection. They're satisfied that 10% can be achieved. So conditions, some of which are included in the update sheet, would be added to the overall recommendation. They include measures such as limiting lighting in the interest of bats, imposition of a construction environmental management plan, great trusted new licensing, and habitat management. But they are satisfied, subject to all those provisions, that ecological impacts can be dealt with and that the 10% biodiversity net gain can be achieved. So just to summarise, I've tried to keep it reasonably light, just there's quite a lot of detail in the report and not to sort of go over it too heavily. But in terms of the planning balance and recommendation, in terms of provision of renewable energy and supporting the grid in that matter, that carries significant weight in favour. The landscape planting will soften the impact over time, but it's not going to, in our view, fully mitigate that harm. Other impacts such as highways, ecology and amenity can be mitigated by conditions, but the landscape harm, what's noted, is localised, i.e. to the local area, and is moderate, and is, in our view, outweighed by the substantial public benefits associated with the critical energy infrastructure. So we consider it represents sustainable development, and therefore our recommendation is to grant planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Titchener. That's a comprehensive report. To members of the public, I have two registered. Could I first call Mr. Alan Sharp, please? Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Sharp, I believe. I do apologise. When you're ready, if you press go on the thing, you'll notice somebody's stolen our clock. So my friend here will be putting the time up on the screen and we'll let you know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The parish council are requesting that the committee use their powers to defer a decision until the tender process has been concluded due to the unusual situation of where this application and that of the Welsh Power application are in principle the same with respect to the infrastructure, but on different parcels of land, very close to each other. The principal reason for requesting this deferment is that as the two companies are in a competitive tendering process, only one will be successful. And if both have been granted permission, then permission on the unsuccessful bid will lapse, but there will be a development principle in place. We understand that there are no precedents in planning. However, we also are fully aware that any potential future similar applications could use the previous granting of permission as a substantive reason why it should be granted in their case. The parish council is not objecting to this application, as following our discussions with NISO, we understand the need for the infrastructure and the close proximity to the new Enget substation. However, we can't support it as we consider the tender process operated by NISO is misguided in that they have not taken responsibility for identifying, in cooperation with Somerset Council and ourselves, a suitable parcel of land that then seeking outline planning permission on that parcel of land. This would have been included in the requirements pack sent out for the tender process to which the applicant would then respond to. If this had been undertaken, then it may have identified a site more suited for this development, for example, on the wider Gravity site, which would have been brownfield rather than developing open countryside. Deferment would give the committee the opportunity to pass this message back to NISO. Finally, if the decision is granted permission, then it is requested that a condition is included for the developer to work with This is Gravity Limited, Agratas and Enget to use and where necessary extend the proposed construction access roadway for the new Enget substation for the primary construction access to their site. This would only be used for the construction period and will be consistent with other transport plans, which would prevent the use of the B3141 through the villages for large construction vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I appreciate that. Can I please call Emma Wagland? Wagland, thank you very much. The same again, please. When you're ready, if you could press it down. We will start the timer for you and listen attentively. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman and committee members. I'm here today as the applicant for a proposed application for the installation of synchronous condenser facility land east of the causeway. This proposal represents a significant step towards a more sustainable and secure future energy system for Somerset and the wider region. This proposal is in response to a requirement from NISO, the operator of the national grid system. As we remove coal-fired power stations and gas from the energy system and move to greater penetration of renewables, it's important to ensure the grid remains stable. The Newbold Abington substation has been identified by NISO for a solution to be installed, which provides services to stabilise the network and maintain the continued deployment of a low carbon and resilient energy system. This is based on wider network studies completed by NISO to ensure the UK's electricity system remains stable. The key function is to prevent the occurrence of blackouts like events in Spain and Portugal in April 2025. Comrade Energy already operate 3 synchronous condensers, providing services to NISO. It's important to note that NISO will only require one solution at this location. This project has been submitted into a tender process, and they will reward based on benefit to the consumer. Only one project will be chosen by NISO to be taken forward and built out. This application site is not subject to any land use designations, which would preclude the application of the presumption in favour of sustainable development for the purposes of the determination of this application. This application site location was selected as a suitable location due to its proximity to the grid connection. Further, the location is situated away from national landscapes, SSSI and the Greenbelt. Further consideration has been given to screening visually and acoustically to minimise impacts of Will Abington residents and the site is able to house the project sufficiently with space. The case officer states that taking all material considerations into account, including compliance with relevant local and national planning policies, the proposal is considered acceptable overall and therefore recommended for approval, subject to appropriate conditions and obligations. Those conditions and obligations include detailed landscape proposals, construction management, noise limits, and operational safeguards. It's key to acknowledge that approving this application does not set a precedent for any future projects, and each application should be considered on its own merits. To conclude, the development proposal is a vital component to ensure the continued deployment of clean energy whilst maintaining energy security and plays a vital role in the national effort to combat climate change. We ask that you support your office's recommendation to approve this application, which is a testament to its strong public benefits and clear need. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much indeed. I appreciate that. Right, colleagues, you've heard representations. Can I open it up to the floor, please? Councillor Groves.
Thank you, Chairman. Excuse me. Well, I don't have a problem with the application. Can I ask if both of these are granted, what is the next step along the line? Could you explain that to us, please?
That is an excellent question and one that was I was thinking about while this goes on. Can I just make a quick comment before we do that? We're having two applications come before us today, two separate applications for the same idea. I just want to make it clear to the room, if I could, please, that these are completely separate applications and will be discussed and presented as such. So when Mr. Titchener goes through the second one, he's not just going through the motions. It is a completely separate application which will be discussed and deliberated as such. Thank you, Mr. Titchener.
So, I mean, upon the decisions made by the committee today, the applicants have to make their tender submissions, and one of the things that they will be scored on is, as the applicant said, in terms of it's usually as I understand it, it's like the cost to the consumer. But if you don't have permission, that cost is going to be even bigger because actually it takes more time to get a scheme together. But ultimately, they will be one of the factors that they will be judged on as part of their tender process will be do they have planning permission or not. Then ultimately, only one of those organisations is going to be successful in winning the tender. The other unsuccessful tenderer will have a permission, but will have no contract with the tender organisation, and therefore no need to pursue. There'll be no need. There's only one connection facility at the Woolhampton substation. I understand the concern that there will be a permission there, and what does that mean in terms of someone else coming along and trying to do something similar on the site? I think the factors are it's still going to be a countryside location. There's still going to be those controls in terms of how you respond to applications in countryside locations. And this is a piece of critical infrastructure that we are, because of that factor, giving substantial weight to the benefits that it brings. There's not that many types of projects that are going to bring such substantial benefits to such a wide area and that would weigh so positively against any of the harms. So there's still going to be harms. So other things, say someone's just trying to bring forward maybe a standard commercial scheme and thing, is not going to attach the same substantial benefits to it. And therefore those harms that are going to still arise are going to weigh much heavier against that scheme. Now we can't just predict the future and say what's going to happen. But certainly in terms of applying that balancing exercise, that extra weight that comes from the nature of this project is fundamental in the decision that we've come to. And that is not necessarily going to apply in any of the same way for a different type of scheme.
Councillor Groves.
Thank you. Yeah, I realise that they're both separate applications. I just wanted a rundown of what happens if they're both granted. That was all. Thank you.
Councillor Bowles.
Yeah, would it be possible to put up the slide showing the buildings? I think on the bottom there it also shows how the proximity is to the village. That's it. Yeah, thank you. Am I right? when you were speaking, is it 15.4 metres? That's to the highest point of the building, so is that the
15.3 to the ridge.
to the ridge?
Yeah.
And on those ridges to the village, how far is that? You said 100 metres, but I see that there was another building on the other side of the road.
There's the other building on the other side of the road, which is a bit further south, is a small stable. I think just a stable, not with accommodation or anything attached to it. So by my measurements, you're just over 100 metres to the first occupied built form on the edge of the village.
Okay, Tony. I have councillor Smedley and then councillor Bradford. Councillor Bradford, please.
Yes. So we have, I know these two options are separate, but they're slightly connected. We have a couple of options outcomes here, don't we? We have the option where we approve both, and you just explained what happens next. We have the option requested by the parishes, which is, I guess, to defer both. Can you tell us what happens next for that one? And if we approve one and don't approve the other, what happens next?
Can I take that?
Yes, please.
Option one is what officers are recommending. Option two, in terms of deferral, we would suggest that there's no reason to defer these applications as we have the information before us that on planning grounds that members can make a decision on. When you're not waiting for any additional information, the process is the process. That's not led by planning, it's led by NESO. For one reason or other, they've done it on the basis they're offering out tenders. And that's created this issue. It's something that's happened elsewhere in the country. There has been some sites in North Wales where there's been more than two applications for the same synchronous condensers, and it gone to the same council. We wouldn't suggest deferring because obviously the tenders are going in soon, and we don't believe there's any genuine reason to defer. In terms of determining applications, yes, you're perfectly entitled to take one view in respect to one site and another view in respect to another site. But what we'd say is, what you mustn't do is approve one, and then say, oh, we've already approved one, so we don't need to consider the other one. That's automatically refused. They have to be looked at on material planning grounds as to whether or not they're acceptable. Officer's view, obviously, Dean's only presented one so far, and he's presented that in planning terms, we believe great weight should be attached to the national energy requirements, and that landscape harm can be somewhat mitigated by screening. We do appreciate that this is slightly unusual development in the countryside, but it's there for a reason, because it's close to the substation that it would connect to. All I would ask is that certainly members determine each application on its own planning merits and sees them as, and I think this is the point that the chairman was making, that you have to look at them on their own planning merits. It's not a beauty pageant. It's not one you're saying, oh, I like that one more than the other. If you think they're both unacceptable, then you can refuse. If you think one's unacceptable on planning grounds, you can refuse. What you mustn't do is say, oh, I prefer that one, I'll approve that one and refuse that one, unless there were very good planning reasons to do so. I don't know if Dean would like to add anything to that. No, thank you.
Could I just come back a minute on that one? Because this committee could approve any of those different outcomes despite what officers recommend, couldn't they, of course? Yep. So what I'm asking is the consequences of us doing that. But of course, although you're saying it's not, one decision will materially affect the other, won't it?
Okay. Well, I assume the consequence would be that there could be an appeal. There could even be a potential judicial review unless the council actually makes a determination based on planning grounds. So that's why I'm steering you away from making a decision based on, I like this one more than that one. If you like this one more than that one, and that one is unacceptable in planning terms, then you can refuse it. What I'm saying is you mustn't base your decision purely on one's been, say we, theoretically, say you were to approve this first one, the second one mustn't be prejudiced by that. You're looking at them separately on their own planning merits. And as I say, our recommendation, didn't come onto it, but you'll have seen from the report, is that both are acceptable in planning terms. And our recommendation is that both are approved. Of course, it's your decision as the committee, not mine, but our recommendation is both are approved. And whilst I understand the parish council's concerns, as Dean has eloquently explained, the fact that you've granted to only one in reality, no one's going to build a synchronous condenser and spend millions of pounds when they're not allowed to connect, when they haven't got a connection. So that's not going to happen. The fallback position that was referred to as, well, I've got a permission here for something industrial, I can come back for something else. As Dean said, we're giving very, very significant weight to the national energy requirements here. And so that wouldn't be a legitimate fallback. It wouldn't be a reason whereby we'd have to roll over.
Hello?
I mean, we couldn't stop someone putting in an application. We can't stop anyone putting in an application in the countryside. But what I'm saying is,
No, I'm not.
whilst I understand the parish council's concerns, and we've exchanged correspondence about this, and with the MP in the past, but whilst I understand those concerns, I can see no reason that you have to legitimately defer these applications. I think we'd be back in the same position at next committee. And the second point is, sorry, I'm labouring the point, but you have to look at these both as independent planning applications. And I don't believe that if one is refused, I think that company, sorry, if they're both approved and one is successful at tender and one isn't, the reality is that that's a commercial decision, and the other company almost certainly would just say, right, we'll walk away from that one, and we'll try luck on the next one, the next tender.
Thank you, Mr. Elwood. Before I come over to Councillor Bradford, I just want to take a legal word if I could, please.
One of the questions that Zach's answered, you asked what happens if you decide to defer. And Zach said that he had no good planning, there were no good planning reasons to defer. I would go further than that. If you're thinking about deferring simply because you know that there is a license, a tender application going for the license, then that would be wrong. The planning regime operates here today. You've got to determine under the Planning Act, the planning application. We quite often have associated regimes which sit alongside but are separate. For example, entertainment premises. You might have an application for a building that wants to become a nightclub, a brand new nightclub. So you're aware that they're applying for an entertainment license for liquor and music, but that's determined separately. In that case, it would be determined by the council under a different committee, the Licensing Act. Completely separate regimes, got to be dealt with completely separately. So I would suggest that you put out of your mind the fact that you know about the tender and the licence application, and you just deal with these two applications in the normal way. That having said that, connected with another one of your questions, it was to do with recognising that there are two applications for very similar development in very similar locations quite near each other. I would echo what Zach and Dean have told you, which is because of the licence application, we can be sure that only one is going to be built out if you were to decide today to grant both of those applications. The connection to the substation will only be granted to one of those sites, I believe. So you've got two guarantees that only one will go ahead. A, the tender and the licence will only be granted to one, and B, the connection to the substation will only happen to one. So that's. But my main advice is that I would not recommend that you defer, because that would be problematic with regard to being fair to the two applicants and the two applications today.
Thank you, Councillor Bradford.
Thank you, Dean, for trying to guide us on a very difficult application. Who never sit on a planning committee? This is something I haven't faced since Hinkley Point was brought to planning committee, and I was involved in that in its very early stages. And believe you me, whatever you decide now, further afield, there's always problems. Sometimes you can't imagine what things solve afterwards. To me, it's a bit backwards, this isn't, to be honest with you. I've never quite experienced anything quite like this, and it's a cart before the horse. No, it's no passion saying, but it is the cart before the horse, and we've had the gentleman from Will Abington Parish Council speak here today, and whatever happens, this is going to be having a massive effect on Will Abington, along with the houses that are recommended to be built as well. So, as a planning committee, we've got a lot of responsibility here today to get things right. Now, this particular firm, I've been reading it down. I've read it 3 or 4 times actually, and I'm still struggling with a lot of it. The ideal thing on this would have been the whole committee for a site visit. So exactly, we're sat around this table, we know exactly what we were talking about, the area, the topography and everything else, the ground conditions, access roads and everything. We know exactly what we were on about. I hate boxing, but I did have a quick look around on Sunday myself, so I wouldn't be quite so in the dark when I come to this committee today. And really, the first application, they've done an awful lot of the things that is required of people. They're going to take out some hedges, they're going to put a lot more trees in, and they're going to make sure it's landscaped really, really well. So the effect on Will Abington will not be as great. It'll be shielded quite well. And it's built on flood zone 3, so you're going to have a bit of a water issue problem, and they seem to resolve that one as well. And the B roads, well, that's up to the people when they start building, what sides of the vehicles they come in and out, etc. I just don't know, but an impact on the community. And I suppose the mitigation towards Will Abington, that will be up to the parish council to negotiate this form of some form of mitigation. You might want something good within the area, and you can talk to these firms sometimes, and you can bend their ears and get something that's real worthwhile doing. And we've got to make a decision on some of these things, and you know, and if we hold it up, the big gigafactory gone up there already, and you know what's happening in the rest of the world. A lot of the other big countries are catching up regarding these batteries, etc., etc. And if we mess about and hang about, even defer, it puts these major applications at risk sometimes. And I feel that I'm going to sit down and listen to what everybody else got to say and go from there. But I do think it's a cart before the horse. No passion saying.
I've broken my thing. I just shout. Thank you, Councillor Bradford. Councillor Bruce.
Thank you, Chair. I think I did ask in this previously, but I'm a bit concerned. I feel almost as our hands are tied to approve both of the applications so that we don't give a competitive advantage to one rather than the other. I did ask to have some information on this one about the legal position, because I do feel that if we do reject one, we are giving a competitive advantage to the other. And so I'd like to know what our position would be if that were to happen, because I feel like we're kind of being told we can't do that because we would be giving a competitive advantage. So I'd like some clarity on that. And also, it was mentioned just now that other areas have had similar situations come up, and I'd like to know how those other areas have dealt with it, whether they have approved all of the applications that came through, and then it's been a decision for the company awarding the contract, and what was the reasoning behind that. We've got more information on those cases. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The circumstances you got here don't change the usual position, which is that each planning application should be decided on its own merits and separate from any other application. The usual position is that commercial and private interests are not relevant to the determination, and no regard should be had to those interests. So that answers directly the question that you're raising. You shouldn't be having regard to any commercial consequences and private interests. It's understandable that you've asked, though, if the outcome is that one application is approved and the other is not approved on good planning grounds, just as in any other application, you read the report carefully, you listen to the planning officers and you make it on good planning reasons, although I note strongly that the recommendation for both is to approve. You won't be at risk if you do decide that you've got good planning reasons to grant one and not the other. You won't be at risk. Other than the normal situation, which is that if you don't have good planning grounds, then you could be subject to an appeal or you could be subject to judicial review. So just as I said earlier, you should try and put the tender process out of your mind. You should definitely not be worried about whether you're going to give an advantage to one or the other. You should just determine these in a normal way.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? Yes, councillor Bolt.
Sorry,
Sorry.
apologies. There was a second part to the question that I asked them.
Oh, apologies.
Chair, I'm gonna have to look through the cases, because although I've got details of the applications, I need to know what the council's determined, but my understanding was that they approved them all. But I need to check that.
Very good. So we have that question on hold at the moment, councillor Bruce, and Zach will come back to us on that in a moment. So we'll go over to councillor Bolt and then to councillor Grimes, please.
The difficulty we've got is we've got both sets of notes given to us. It's guaranteed to compare the information that we've got, the objections that we had between the two. If we had come into a cold, it would be slightly different. But my question is, will there be a survey for the roads through there? Because we know that a lot of heavy transport on that start road, then a lot of difficulties. Will there be a before survey so that any damage caused will be put to the companies?
Can I just interrupt, councillor, because I have to correct you for the record. You should not be comparing the information that you've been given on each of the two reports. You're dealing with them separately. I can't stress that even more strongly than I already have. So you must not make comparisons. You must deal with them separately, and it's wrong. Please correct that.
What I'm saying is, because we've got both, it would be easy to go down that route. But what I've got, my question is purely a survey which would go for whichever anybody that gets the application for those particular roads.
Okay, I want to make sure the committee makes the decision in the right way and that we don't do anything wrong. So I just want to make it clear that, and hopefully you are agreeing with me now, that you won't be making comparisons and you'll look at them separately. Thank you.
Okay, Dean, do you have an answer on the highways?
I'm just looking through to see whether their proposed conditions included I know the type of survey you mean, because there's often a condition survey before and after, just to check. And I don't think they specifically requested it for this scheme, I have to say. I'm just checking through the list of their specific conditions, but unless it was included by the construction management, usually it's done as a standalone condition. So I have to say, Councillor Swart, I don't think there is a requirement from the highway authority for such provision on this application. I know the highway officer, I think, is on the Teams call, so I'm happy if we wanted to say to go to them and say, do they feel that it is merited in a scheme of this nature? I appreciate that the impacts are sort of relatively short in terms of timescale because it's all construction phase, but then they are more intense during that period. Whether that's justified. If members felt that was helpful, I think be happy to see if there was any particular views of the highway officer on that particular point.
Oh, last year I did it. Cheers, guys. Do you want us to ask the rep online from Highways, Dean?
Emma Meacham, if you are on the call, and happy to then turn your camera on. Just if you wanted to have offer any thoughts on whether there's a need for a condition survey of the highway.
Thanks, Dean. Yeah, I'm more than happy to give opinion at this point. It's not included as a suggested condition. To be fair, these conditions are very difficult to enforce. Every HGV has a right to use the public highway. It would be very difficult to tell if any damage was done by the construction vehicles for this development or the one opposite. So either of these developments, or if it was caused by another HGV. But I'm happy if the members wish to put a highways condition on, we can. I have a standard wording that I can send across.
And thank you very much for that. That's something that crossed my mind as well, whether we can condition such a thing. Is that the way you were thinking?
I don't know if it had to come from highways or if it's something that we could, get Dean to do.
Okay, so maybe we could make a note of that, Dean. Thank you.
Certainly can. And there's one point I just want to, just on the point of construction management, because there is a construction management plan condition, a very detailed condition, which looking at the published report, has only come through on one of the applications, which controls all the movement, and it's actually imperative that gets imposed on both. So if we get to the point where everyone's making recommendations, for argument's sake, so that's for approval, but absolutely want that condition. And if members felt that the condition survey was necessary, we also be adding that at the same point.
Thank you very much. Councillor Grimes, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I've read the papers thoroughly on this, and we are only looking purely at this application, which is what I've done. I've asked about the process, what happens afterwards, which I'm happy with. And I don't see any problem with this at this stage at all. I don't see any planning reasons to defer or turn it down. So I'm going to move the recommendation, please, purely on this application and taking no notice of any other application. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Grimes. We have a proposal from Councillor Grimes, seconded by, who was it? Councillor Bradford, thank you. And then I saw a flurry of hands go up. First, Councillor Bolt, and then, no, I apologise. Alistair, you were ready to go first, weren't you?
Okay.
And then to Councillor Bolt, please.
Sorry, that's not right. Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bruce was absolutely spot on everything she said. I couldn't agree more. You can't play off one against the other. Although that she set the application, of course, everybody can see that in their own merit, in their own way, they kind of do go hand in hand. I know they're separate, but they do go hand in hand. Civil engineers have gone to a lot of trouble here to position where they want to things go, how they want to go about to access roads, etc. I don't like to argue against them. I think they've got it spot on, absolutely correct. And I said, I reiterate, I do agree with Councillor Bruce, what she said there. And I would have seconded that, but it's already been done. So obviously, I'm happy to go along with this thing. Absolutely no problem with this.
Thank you, Councillor Hendry. To Councillor Bolt, please.
Yeah, it would. Quite happy with this. I think all of us, I am shot up to second it. Is that with the additional?
The additional highways.
Yes.
Thing. Yeah, that's what we're asking for as part of that proposal. Is that, we've made a note of that, Dean?
I guess if I can just clarify, so in terms of, you're asking for the condition survey condition, which we can get the wording from highways to impose. I would suggest that the construction management condition that I just need to pull forward from the other application, so which I think is set out as condition 5 from the other application. And in the update note, there were some extra conditions in that which were needed for ecological purposes and surface water, that the recommendation is subject to their imposition, and the recommendation is effective of that note as well. Just, and if I understand that's the basis that your recommendation is on.
Absolutely.
Lovely, thank you, Dean. I'm going to go to councillor Clayton, please.
Yeah, just very briefly, quite simply, the advantages outweigh the disadvantages, and these conductors are very much needed on a global basis.
Very good, thank you. Now, I don't see any more speakers at the moment, but I am waiting for an answer from my colleague, Mr. Elwood, regarding lots of other applications. I don't want to put any pressure on you, Mr. Elwood.
That's fine. Yeah, just. Like. I'm desperate to do them all. Keep them all. I'll get a fat one day. No, I never has. Here we go. Right. Okay, so the ones I can find were from Rhondda Cynon Taf Council. Both applications from different applicants, one Conrad Energy and one from Green Frog Energy Limited, I think it was. One, they were actually considered different committees, but they were relating to the same site and the same principle of only one connection. And one was approved on the 26th of January 2023, and the second was approved on the 9th of March 2023. I don't know whether or not which one won and which one's been implemented, but there is an example there of a council who's allowed two separate synchronous condensers relating to the same, effectively the same site.
Yeah.
There is one in Dumfries and Galloway as well, sorry, but I haven't had time to look at the minutes. Unfortunately, I've had to go through all the minutes.
So final word from councillor.
Thank you very
So
much.
final word from councillor Bruce.
Thank you for coming back with that. I am struggling with these and I think I'm probably more inclined. I don't want to object. I do support the need for it. But I am struggling with making a decision in this way. And I'm inclined to agree with comments from parish council about the way that this process has been done. So I think I'm probably inclined to abstain on it, but just wanted to make that observation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, that's noted. Do we have any further comments on this? Councillor Grimes, please.
Yeah, I understand the interest in what other councils have done, but that nothing to do with what we've got in front of us. We should be looking at exactly the application that we've got. I appreciate the interest, but it's nothing to do with what we're doing now, as I see it. Thank you.
It's a point well taken. I have a proposal on the table, and I'm very aware that we have a long agenda and a room full of people. So we're going to go to councillor Ferguson.
I'm happy to second. You don't have a seconder.
Oh, no, we have a seconder.
Oh, then I won't.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for not doing that.
Yeah. Thank God I'm here.
Right, with that then, if there are no other thoughts to the floor. Yes. Do you want to know the addition? Before we go forward? Yeah.
So the extra additions in addition to the recommendation, which is on my report at page 36, is the highways conditions survey, the wording which will be firmed up shortly between the highways officer and the planning officer, in consultation with the chair. Plus the construction management condition, which will be similar to what we see elsewhere on the agenda, plus the extra conditions which were on the update note, which has already been circulated.
Okay, thank you. And with that then, all those in favour of the proposal to grant permission for this application, please raise your hand. Yes, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 9, 4. Any against? Any against, please? None against, and any abstentions, please? And 1 abstention. With that, that is passed. Thank you very much indeed.
Chairman, I found this coal the other day.
Councillor Bradford's a bit cold. How are we all feeling about that?
Can I second that?
Seconded by Councillor Ferguson.
I get real miserable when I'm cold.
You get miserable. I'm all miserable.
Yeah. What's so, it's cold here today.
Can we turn the aircon down? No. Oh, that's a good point. Let me ask.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Or get Councillor Bradford a blanket for his name. Thank you.
I really listen to them.
With that then, thank you very much. We will go on to the next application, and I want to highlight this again. Absolutely, we're drawing a line here and we're going on to the next application. Okay, so with that then, Dean, if you could please.
Thank you very much. So
Sorry, item 6.
there's obviously going to be some similarities in the presentation to the last one. I've tried to keep this a little bit shorter and not go over, just keep it to the bits that are relevant to the actual scheme. Ultimately, this is a scheme which is on the west side of the road, leading north from Willett, and the other scheme was on the east side. It essentially proposes the same type of development. And again, it's the 4 members due to the recommendation contrary to the views of the parish council. There was an update sheet done for this one as well, which had some similar recommendations about ecological conditions and informatives and drainage. I think there was one tweak to a plan number as well in this one. So the site is on, so the plan is a bit faint, but that there is the road running down. And then this is the red line and comes to the site, outlined in red. This is the proposed site plan, so it shows the development. This scheme has the condenser house in a single building. That's this building within the centre of the site. And then with the ancillary equipment on its west side, there's no sort of built development really in the north or southern field. Those are primarily for sort of construction phase rather than operational phase development. The site has an existing vehicle access on the eastern boundary, but it will also have a construction phase access to the north. These are the elevation drawings of the building. So the single building to house the kit. This one's going to be 47 metres in length, 43 metres in width, and 13 metres in height to the ridge. And again, same considerations in terms of principle, design, flood risk, highways, community, ecology. And I'll go through this fairly quick. I just want to make sure that we're all taking legal decisions, but ultimately the lawful basis in terms of how we're assessing the application is the countryside location. The local plan has support for renewable energy and related schemes. So countryside locations must demonstrate there's a need, but that can be acceptable subject to consideration of site-specific impacts. National policy supports this type of provision. There's a new substation at Gravity near to the site. With a connection for this type of project, and which is the primary point of connection. So we consider the principle still to be acceptable subject to the impacts. Visual impact on this one. So we've got these couple of views looking out. Again, the landscape is flat. It's bounded by rings. You've got some the southern sort of field here, which is this lower field. It's got quite mature boundary treatments. So sort of there's quite a mature boundary running along here. A bit more open between these top 2 fields, and then there's more sort of mature boundary running along that sort of just off the shot here. There are some existing electricity infrastructure, sort of pylons, particularly located further north of the site. Again, looking, this is just from the existing point of access, so stood there looking in both directions, good visibility in each direction, but it's fairly relatively open and a very flat landscape. And then just looking at the site, so this is the site plan with all the landscaping and the attenuation features shown on it and the planting features. So the built form is all contained within this central field. So there is to be new woodland planting located on the sort of western and eastern parts of the site. There's already quite strong planting, sort of along these southern boundaries. And there's quite a lot of these little dots, lots of individual trees to be planted throughout the scheme as well. There was reference in the report of a traditional orchard. There was going to be a small area of orchard planting, which was going to go here. That's actually come out at the request of our own ecologists, believe it or not. It's to do with the existing habitat designation of this field, which is called coastal and floodplain grazing marsh. And actually, they didn't want that altered in any way. So they've come up with a different way to achieve biodiversity net gain on the site. So there was reference in the report that's not now included. Again, the scheme had heavy involvement of the Council of Landscape Officers. That involved some changes in terms of different types of trees, faster growing tree stock, so a larger tree stock to get that sort of screening impact coming into play much quicker. So because obviously in the early years, the site is going to be more open. Again, in terms of landscape character, quite similar character to the other site, and the scale and the height of the buildings quite similar, even though there's only one building. The height isn't similar, slightly lower, but it is certainly wider. So it's going to be introducing again substantial footfall into a predominantly open rural landscape, and that's going to result in a noticeable permanent change. But that landscaping will assist over time. So the harms, there will be harm, and that's again weighed in the balance. Flood risk considerations. So this shows the surface water drainage strategy, which is to have on-site attenuation, water held on site before being discharged from nearby ditches. Again, we're in a flood zone 3 location. Again, it's part of that wider flood zone 3 location, which is incorporating land all across the wider site. So sequentially, given the need to connect into the gravity substation, sequentially we consider it suitable. The consultees, the Environment Agency, the Local Flood Authority and IDB do not have any objection. There's a number of conditions which are set out in the report, include on surface water, land rating, etc., distances from reams. Those are all in there. There's one additional surface water one in the update note, which we would recommend be imposed as well. Overall, in terms of with all that package of conditions, it's considered acceptable on flood risk grounds. In terms of highways, so there are 2 accesses. There's one at the northern end, one at the southern end. So again, this site's going to operate on a largely unmanned basis, so operational traffic is going to be minimal. Construction phase for this one is anticipated to last for 28 months with a peak of 50 HGV movements per day, that equates to about 5 per hour. Traffic. Again, construction and HGV traffic will route by the strategic highway network, so largely approaching the site from the north, avoiding the weight restriction within the centre of Wellington. The access arrangements have been assessed by the Highway Authority and confirmed it's acceptable, but there are a number of conditions to secure the visibility displays, traffic management measures, construction management plan that is detailed in this report. And consequently, they consider that whilst there are to be some shorter term impacts, overall development is acceptable on highways grounds. In terms of amenity, so this plan just shows broadly the location of the building. So this is slightly further away from residential properties within the village, so looking at about almost 300 metres. So again, environmental health have been heavily involved in the green noise mitigation scheme. It achieves the same level of background, so more noise mitigation as the other scheme, and at a level that environmental health are satisfied with, which is noise levels no greater than background levels, and that's really secured by condition. And then there are other controls in the form of measures to protect residential during construction, external light on land and navigation. So in terms of amenity, we officers consider that addresses those factors. Ecological impact, the update sheet shows what's been happening since the committee report was published, because the BNG biodiversity net gain requirements are still being renegotiated. That's now been done to the satisfaction of the ecologists. So 10% mandatory can be achieved. That's going to be through a combination of woodland, tree and hedgerow planting with the purchase again of some offsite credits. The ecologists are satisfied that 10% can be achieved. They don't have any objection, and there are conditions and informatives and changes to the plan set out in the update note, which will secure BNG. It will limit some lighting and a construction environmental management plan. So again, ecological matters are considered to be satisfactorily addressed. So it just comes to the recommendation, again, giving that significant weight in favour of renewable energy. The landscape planting will soften the impact over time, but there will still be harm. Other impacts can be mitigated by conditions. And given that the harm is localised and moderate, the public benefits associated with the energy infrastructure are substantial and outweigh the harm, and therefore we are recommending planning permission to grant it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Titchener. I appreciate that. Can I go to public then, please, and ask Councillor Sharp to join us once again? Welcome back, Councillor Sharp. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you. The parish council are requesting that the committee use their powers to defer a decision until the tender process has been concluded due to the unusual situation where this application and that of Conrad Energy are in principle the same with respect to the infrastructure, but on different parcels of land. The principal reason for requesting this deferment is that as the two companies are in a competitive tender process, only one will be successful, and if both are granted the permission, then permission on the unsuccessful bid will lapse, as was discussed, but there will be a development principle in place. We understand that no precedents in planning. However, we're fully aware that any similar potential future applications, e.g. battery storage, and it's picking up on one of what was said earlier, was the fact that that is, and we're aware of situations where that could likely happen in the near future, connecting into the new substation, could be used for granting permission as a substantive reason why this should be granted in their case. The parish council are not objecting to this application, as following our discussion with NISO, we understand the need for the infrastructure and the close proximity to the new Engate station substation. However, we cannot support it as we consider the tender process operated by NISO is misguided in that they are not taking responsibility for actually identifying a parcel of land suitable for the tender process. And that's not been done in cooperation with Somerset or ourselves. This would have been, as I said, included in the tender pack process. If this had been done, undertaken, then it may have identified a more suitable site on the gravity site, for example, which would have been brownfield rather than development on open country. Again, deferment would give the committee the opportunity to pass this message back to NISO. Finally, as I was saying, this one is probably more applicable in the fact that if the condition is granted, then because it's very close to the new Engate substation access road, it's about 50 metres, if that. Then it would be appropriate to add a condition in that the construction should be, or the construction vehicles should use that access rather than using the B3141. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor. I appreciate that. And can I call Thomas Queedy, please? Thank you. Speaking on behalf of the agent, Savills, so whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Tom Quill and I'm Senior Planner at Savills. I'm speaking in support of this application, which seeks permission for the construction and operation of a synchronous condensed facility on land west of the Causeway near Wellabington. The applicant, Welsh Power, is a UK-based energy company specialising in flexible energy systems and grid stability infrastructure, and is a recognised market leader, having delivered over 1.5 gigawatts of energy projects across England, Wales and Scotland, with 7 grid stability facilities either in operation or under construction across the UK. The need for this development arises from the UK's transition away from coal and gas-fired power stations towards renewable energy sources. While essential for decarbonisation, this shift has reduced grid stability. As highlighted in the officer's report, there's a clear national need to modernise the electricity network to support increased capacity and maintain system stability. In response, NISO has launched a long-term 2029 tender to procure stability services from eligible developers in key locations across Great Britain for a competitive tender process. The infrastructure will enhance system resilience, protect against faults and outages, and strengthen the national energy security. There's also a clear local need for this development. A new substation is under construction at the Gravity Enterprise Zone to facilitate the connection of the major battery manufacturing facility to the national grid. NISO has reserved a connection bay at this location for a successful long-term 29 tender scheme. Due to technology efficiency, proximity is a key factor. Welsh Power has worked hard to acquire an appropriate parcel of land and progress this application for which it will seek to fulfil this need, should it be successful in the tender process. Members will note that you've just reached a favourable decision on an application for similar development near to the site. This should not preclude you from reaching the same decision on this proposal. Only one of these two schemes will ultimately be delivered following the outcome of the tender process. Each application must be considered on its own merits, and a consistent approach to both applications will ensure that planning is not the determining factor in the competitive tender process, thereby ensuring the best value for UK consumers. So in summary, the proposal responds to both the local and national needs, supporting the transition to a low carbon energy system while maintaining network stability. Its proximity to new Will Abington substations is a key operational advantage, ensuring efficiency and alignment with grid requirements. We thank officers for their hard work in bringing this application to committee and note there are no outstanding objections from consultees. We support the officers' recommendation for approval and accept the conditions as drafted. The delivery of this critical energy infrastructure will enhance the resilience and reliability of the electricity network while enabling the increased deployment of renewable energy generation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much indeed. Appreciate that. Onward to the floor, if I could then please, do we have any immediate questions? Councillor Bolt.
With regards to this one, the previous application, the survey of the road systems beforehand, will that apply to this one? I've misunderstood possibly what you'd said before.
The construction management, so in terms of construction management, in terms of managing the impact, so that is already listed as one of the conditions on this one. If you're talking about the conditions of the highway that members asked to be imposed on the last scheme, then that is a decision that members can take if you feel you want to make an approval and that condition is necessary to mitigate harm to the highway. That is within members' gift to add that as an additional condition.
Thank you.
Is that something you'd like to append if such a thing goes forward?
Yeah, if it goes forward, I prefer that on there. I've seen too many large developments take place and this hasn't happened, and all of a sudden we're picking up the costs on highways.
Noted, appreciate it, and I'm sure Mr. Titchener will make a note of that. Thank you. Do we have any further questions? No? You're making my life easier. You have something? Yes, it's a good point. Dean, I know we spoke about this previously, but this is a different application, so I'm going to make the point again. Let's pretend this application goes forward and they lose any tender process, but they still have an application granted on this parcel of land. Would it fall under a particular usage class? And would that preclude it from being exchanged for another usage class in the future? If you could just go over that one more time, please.
I mean, the land use until development takes place would still be agricultural, but the planning history would, as with any application, is always material consideration in the consideration of any new applications. But I think the point still remains the same, that if an application comes forward, it still has to apply policy, national and local, which is what we've done here. And national and local policy gives significant weight to the type of development that's proposed here. There's also a locational requirement that comes into play in terms of needing to be near the Will Abington substation that is highly unlikely to be a relevant factor in other applications that may come forward on here. They're also going to have to deal with, and we did mention this before, factors such as it being flood zone 3, and the application of the sequential test, which requires that you direct development to areas of lowest flood risk. And actually, That's in a way easier to overcome here because the nature of the thing can only really go where it needs to go, whereas other development doesn't need to be in this location. It's going to struggle with that. So we have to consider each application on its merits, but I think any other application is going to have a much bigger ask in terms of trying to get development on the site because those factors that are so favourable in this case are not going to be so favourable in any other case.
Thank you very much. That clears things up for me. Do we have any questions from the floor? We don't. With that then, I'm going to take a vote on. Councillor Bolt.
Just saying, can I go with the officer's recommendation with that addition?
Is that a proposal with
Yes,
that
please.
condition in place that we accept? And that's seconded by councillor Clayton. Thank you very much. With that in mind, and with no more questions or statements from the floor, I'm going to put it to the committee. If you are in, oh, with the update, yes, sorry. If we are in favour of accepting this application, please raise a hand. That's 9 in favour. Do we have any against, please? None against, and do we have any abstentions? We have 1 abstention. Thank you very much. That is passed. I appreciate your diligence with going through those two. Such alacrity. So we shall go on, please, to item number 7, which is the Bridgewater Gateway development. Bridgewater Gateway development, Bridgewater Road, North Petherton. And Millie's taking this one. Excellent. Whenever you're ready, do you need to set stuff up? No, all right. Fine, just wait for the room to clear.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. So this is an application for the approval of the reserve matters for the erection of 15 dwellings, associated access, green infrastructure, landscaping, drainage and engineering works, phase 2 of Bridgewater Gateway. The application is for 4 members as the proposal is for a major development and the view of the Town Council is contrary to the officer's recommendation. There's a verbal update to provide. So since the publication of the report, the LLFA have reviewed the additional information submitted because at the time of writing the report, the response was still outstanding. However, they are satisfied that their previous concerns are now alleviated and have recommended an appropriate condition. So noting that the conditions on the original outline consent are still relevant, they've also asked a condition which says the development shall be carried out in accordance with the surface water drainage details and supporting modelling pursuant to the reserve matters application and approved in writing by the LPA, demonstrating that surface water flows and impermeable areas arising from the 15 dwellings hereby approved are accommodated within the wider drainage network approved under the hybrid application. So just as a reminder to members, this is a reserve matters in respect of the hybrid consent that was sought to be varied at last committee and given resolution to grant. The section 73 is yet to be issued in terms of the permission because it is subject to a deed of variation and this is in progress. And the latest update I have from our legal is that this is from today, so very fresh. So currently our legal position is the substantive provisions of the deed of variation have now been agreed. Currently waiting for confirmation that the charge over the site is being discharged, as this will affect who needs to be a party. And that once this has been resolved, we can then be in a position to circulate the deed of variation for signing. So it's progressed. So the officer's recommendation for approval is that if consent were to be granted in respect to this application for members, it is recommended that the issue of this is pursuant to the section 73 deed of variation, and therefore not issued until the deed of variation is completed. And this is set out in paragraph 1.2 of the officer's report. Okay, so moving on to the presentation now. So the presentation will follow the same format of the report when considering the main elements of the scheme. A list of the relevant policies from the local plan and the other relevant documents for this application. So the application site lies to the south of Wilstock and Stockmore residential areas, to the west of the Huntworth roundabout that leads to junction 24 of the M5 motorway. The application relates to the reserved matters element of the hybrid consent, which is outlined in red, with which section 73 was presented to last month's committee with resolution to grant. To the southwest of the site is the Vistry site that has resolution to grant for 150 dwellings. And to the east of the site lies the Bridgewater Gateway commercial site, with the area outlined in orange currently subject to a planning application for 8 units. So this plan shows the area of land that is subject to this reserved matters application, which is within that bigger red line on the previous slide. So move on to photos. So these are the same photos that were shown at the committee last month, giving you an idea of the surrounding area and the access road that's already been built out. So the application seeks approval for the erection of 15 apartments to be delivered across 3 buildings. The accommodation proposed is 12 2-bed apartments and 3 1-bed apartments. The proposed development is for 100% affordable housing, with a 10-year split of 4 2-bed apartments as shared ownership, with the remainder provided as social rent. The proposed scheme includes landscaping and 2 parking areas, each served by vehicular access onto Carnival Way. So this, I called this building A. These references are my own references that I've used in the report, just for clarity. So as circled in red, building A seeks to provide 4 2-bed apartments within a pitched roof building, finished with gable detailing and flat roof window projections, dark grey roof tiles and light red brick to the walls with dark grey brick detailing. The proposed floor plans of the building are now shown on the slide, showing that also each apartment has access to its own front door. This is then building B, circled in red on the plan. So as you move along the front of the site, the bricks are shown to be the same as building A. For some reason, I don't know why, when I copied the drawing over, it went a bit daft. So just for clarity. Building B is a 3-storey building with a pitch roof, gable detailing and flat roof window projections, again like building A, with dark grey roof tiles and light red brick to the walls with dark grey brick detailing. So each floor is proposed to provide 2 2-bed apartments and 1 1-bed apartment, so a total of 9 apartments are proposed to be within this building. And then as we move sort of to the rear of the site, this is building C. So a 2-storey building proposed to provide 2 2-bed flats, finished with materials that match the other buildings, with each apartment served by its own front door. So moving on to the planning considerations in respect of the principle of development, the application site is within the policy B4 allocation for mixed residential and commercial use. Additionally, the site benefits from extant outline consent for 15 dwellings. The proposal seeks detailed consent for the same quantum of development that benefits from this outline consent, and therefore the principle of the development is considered to be acceptable. So as previously mentioned, the application is for 15 affordable homes, with this part of the site benefiting from full planning permission with the part of the site benefiting from full planning permission seeking to deliver 36 affordable homes. So in total, the phase 2 Bridgewater Gateway site seeks to provide 51 affordable homes on site. So initial concerns were raised by affordable housing regarding the resulting cluster that would arise by having these 15 dwellings in this one location. However, following discussions with the operator and understanding their requirements, it was considered that actually this is acceptable. Sorry. The affordable housing officer has also reviewed the proposed accommodation, and this has been accepted with a recommended 10-year split of
the 4 two-bed apartments to be shared ownership and the remainder provided as social rent. So we then move on to highways, consideration of resultant traffic impacts from the existing dwellings in terms of the wider highway network have already been assessed and accepted at outline stage. So it's only the detailed matters that are to be assessed now. Initially, there was a request from highways for further information regarding tracking diagrams to clearly show how vehicles, not just cars, but things like waste vehicles, can enter and exit the site. This was submitted and accepted by the Highway Authority with the recommendation of appropriate conditions. Moving on to ecology, so there is a condition on the hybrid approval to require the reserve matter to incorporate biodiversity enhancement measures. So a biodiversity enhancement management plan then has been submitted to support this application, and the ecologist has accepted this, and conditions can be used to secure those mitigation measures that are outlined in the document. So as mentioned in the verbal update, the LLFA have reviewed the additional details provided. So there were basically requests for further information. That's been submitted, and the LLFA are satisfied that their previous concerns have now been addressed, and that italics text on the screen is the condition that I read out. So it's just wanting to secure the surface water drainage details. Considering visual amenity, layout and landscape, following a discussion with the planning officer, buildings were amended to a more simplified palette and to also better reflect the character of the full element of the site. It's proposed to impose a condition to secure actual details of materials and possible samples, and also a condition to comply with the submitted landscaping strategy. So moving on to residential amenity, initially concerns were raised by the designing out crime officer. Some of the issues raised weren't particularly planning matters in terms of access, security arrangements. You know, some of these things do fall outside the planning regime. Nevertheless, the scheme has been amended to overcome concerns regarding surveillance of certain parts of the site, natural surveillance. All dwellings are also considered to meet national space standards and served by adequate levels of natural light. Whilst no private external amenity space has been provided, this is really due to the nature of it being apartments rather than houses. There are still a number of public open spaces within walking distance. And the proposal was considered to be adequately distanced from existing and proposed dwellings to not give rise to detrimental impact on other residents. So as this is a reserve matters, it's perhaps worth flagging the planning obligations that are secured already by the Section 106 that's associated with the outline consent. So this secure the phasing plan, the public open space, LAPS, LEAP, footpath, sustainable urban drainage, the affordable housing, and the affordable housing officer has confirmed that this proposal complies with the Section 106 requirements. A financial contribution towards the provision of GP services at North Pemberton Surgery and Somerset Bridge Medical Centre, which is approximately £212,000, and that's index linked as well. And also securing the implementation of the travel plan along with a safeguarding sum. So the planning balance and conclusion. So the application seeks approval for the reserve matters of 15 affordable dwellings pursuant to ex-ante outline consent. The site is allocated for housing, and the application does not seek to change the number of dwellings that benefit from outline consent. And also that old chestnut, the lack of the 5-year housing land supply is, got to be in the back of our minds as well. There's been no outstanding objections from relevant consultees following the amendments that have been made. And it's therefore considered that the application is compliant with relevant policies of the local plan and the NPPF. And as such, the officer's recommendation is to approve planning permission subject to relevant conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Comprehensive report. With that, can I ask, please, Councillor Herbert to join us at the front? Welcome, Councillor. Whenever you're ready, we will start the clock. You have 3 minutes.
Just explain.
Sure.
Please, Councillor Herbert isn't able to come. I'm actually the town clerk at North Pemberton Town Council. He's asked me to come and read what he had.
Okay. And sorry, who are you?
I'm Joy Norris. I'm the town clerk.
Joy. Thank you for joining us. Whenever you're ready.
Okay. So, good afternoon, Chair, members and members of the public. The Town Council acknowledges the improvements thus far in the amended plans. However, these changes do not address the principal issue raised in our consultative response, i.e. the absence of any updated or cumulative transport assessment to support this reserved matter submission. The applicant's transport assessment was completed in July 2022 using traffic surveys from December 2021. It is 4.5 years old and predates most of the committed and proposed development in North Petherton. This application for 15 homes would not, on its own, have a severe effect, but when considered alongside the recently approved application for 346 dwellings, it makes a total of 361 houses, which will have a significant cumulative effect on the A38. Analysis demonstrates with a high degree of confidence that the A38 corridor is operating beyond its practical capacity under the combined effect of committed and proposed development. The Town Council's own traffic impact assessment, submitted to and held by Somerset Council's Planning Department, identifies an approximate 39% increase in traffic when the 7 schemes within the immediate area are considered collectively. At what point will Somerset Council and this committee acknowledge the reality facing residents every day? How much longer can the persistent congestion, daily gridlock and increasingly unsafe road conditions continue to be ignored? Where is your strategic thinking? The applicant's modelling shows that 65% of traffic from this site disperses directly on the A38. This is based entirely on the 2021 conditions and does not represent reality. The stated active travel measures are not evidence to support their effectiveness or long-term behaviour change. Reality is predominantly car dependency. The applicant refers to cumulative impacts, which once again are not evidenced within their assessment. So how can the planning officer state the analysis submitted is compliant and not in conflict with NPPF paragraph 116 or the Sedgemoor local plan policy of D13 and D14, which require development to minimise the cumulative transport impacts and maintain safe and suitable access? The amended submission does not include or address an updated transport impact assessment, a cumulative assessment under policy D13 and D14, or any strategic mitigation. For these reasons, the Town Council maintains its objection and asks members to refuse or defer the application until a current cumulative transport impact assessment is provided.
Thank you very much, Ms Norris. Appreciate that. Could I please call Katie Peters? Welcome, Katie. Whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. My name is Katie Peters from Keepmoat Homes. Thank you for the opportunity to address you in respect of our reserve matters application for 15 homes at Bridgewater Gateway site. This application is submitted jointly with our partner Live West. Firstly, it's important to recognise that the principle of development is already firmly established. The site benefits from an extant outline consent and it forms part of a wider allocated and approved scheme. This application is therefore about agreeing the detailed design and appearance of the dwellings to be provided. The 15 homes proposed will provide a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom homes, including both social rent and shared ownership, which will be managed by Live West. The homes proposed directly respond to local housing need and aligned with adopted policy and existing Section 106 agreement. The design and layout of the development has been carefully considered in discussion with Live West and updated following discussion with your officers. The scheme provides a coherent layout of the 3 apartment buildings, high quality materials, appropriate levels of car parking and landscaping. Importantly, the development meets national space standards, ensures good levels of light and outlook, and protects residential amenity with appropriate separation distances. The development will deliver 15 high-quality affordable homes. We're pleased that your officers are supportive of the application and are recommending approval. It is noteworthy that highway officers raise no objection, flood risk and drainage can be managed through conditions, and the LFA have now confirmed they are content with the proposal. There are no objections from technical consultees. Mitigation is proposed with the development in parallel with the delivery of the wider consented development of Bridgewater Gateway Phase 2, which members considered at the May Planning Committee. This includes biodiversity enhancement, drainage controls and construction management. This proposal delivers much needed affordable homes, contributes to the council's 5-year housing land supply, makes effective use of an allocated and consented site in accordance with the outline approval, and contributes to sustainable growth in a highly accessible location near existing services and infrastructure. In summary, this is a well-designed, policy-compliant and sustainable scheme that has been thoroughly assessed by your officers and which they conclude is acceptable. I would respectfully urge members to approve this reserve matters application in line with the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. That's all we have from the public. Lily, do you want to come back on those policy questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
So in respect of the concerns regarding the cumulative impact on the highways, so this is just the reserve matters application. So at outline stage, that was assessed in terms of the overall quantum of the developments, and not just these 15, but the other 300 odd that are also part of the scheme. So that has already been assessed, but that was at outline stage. So I appreciate that it might look that the data's outdated, but at the time of that original outline application, it wasn't outdated. So that's why there hasn't been an update to that information. And I would say that any sort of subsequent applications have to take into account committed development. So they would be taking into account this scheme because it's got outline consent. I think that's it. Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And with that, I shall open it up to the floor. Councillor Clayton, please.
Yeah, just for clarification, I assume this application must be looked at in its own merit, like every other application we look at. If not, why? Or can we look at the bigger picture? I think I know the answer, but it might clarify things for everybody.
Sorry, can you clarify what you mean by bigger picture?
All the areas around it, basically.
So sort of similar to what I was just saying in response to town council comments, the sort of big picture has been assessed at outline stage.
Yeah.
And can I just add, so technically this is part of the wider application. So you've got the outline and then the reserve matters, they're part of the same application. So it can't be looked at afresh in terms of the principle, because the principle's already been established. All we can look at are the matters that were reserved and now we have details of. Yeah, thank you.
It might be useful to hear that.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Clayton.
Thank you, Councillor Clayton. Councillor Bradford, please, and then to Councillor Bruce.
Chairman, thank you. And the North Pelican Council, then, after they objected on the traffic movements, etc. What was granted before some of these things were done. So really, not like to bear those, I think. But there's a lot of work being put in by the clerk and a couple of members of the North Pelican Town Council regarding drainage and traffic. It's probably not the right thing to do is ignore it at the present time, because North Pelican is a growth area. I wouldn't mind letting it grow a bit more yet. What we're going to do with the car, I really don't know. The drainage, after the good old government dished out 50 million yesterday regarding to the local drainage board, etc., that shouldn't be any problem anymore if it's spent wisely and not on silly things. I like the 100% affordable housing. I don't like the 3-bedroom building B. That would look a lot better if it's all the same heights. It's not I'm critical of that, but you're on a bit of high ground there anyhow. Topography of the bit of land I know, driving on junction 24 most days, 3 or 4 times. You're going to be looking into something, and building B is going to be a little bit higher than building A and C. It's a great shame it didn't keep all things in context together. Look a lot better. And we've got to be thinking of these things, because people are looking now, and everybody's a bit touchy about development. in fact, we're becoming a nation of real NIMBYs. Now, we've only had NIMBYs before, but now we're becoming real NIMBYs. Nobody likes what's happening. I'll finish there. Thank you.
Can I come in there, Chair, please? Yeah, thank you, councillor Bradford. Just a couple of things. So the assessment on drainage is similar to the assessment on highways. The cumulative impact has been assessed at outline stage. With any application, the onward drainage connectivity is also assessed. So it's not just looking at the site, it's also looking that downstream there is capacity to take the flows. In terms of the building height, I appreciate what you're saying, that the rest are 2-storey. However, if this was reduced to 2-storey, you're then increasing the footprint. And by increasing the footprint, you'd be reducing the amount of landscaping and amenity space that could be provided. Some CGI images were produced by the developer to demonstrate the street scene and how it would look as well with the background of the rest of the site. And officers deemed that this was acceptable. So yeah, I'll just leave it there.
Thank you very much. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Does it satisfy?
Well, I think when people put in for developments, excuse me, they should go the whole hog and do exactly what they put in. These bits and pieces do cause problems. And in an area like North Petherton at present, in particular the Gateway site, we got Greg's, we got a coffee shop, we got what's the name of the place? Little's. Yeah, Little's, something else gone in there, all bits and pieces been added in all the time. And you can never get a true picture of what it should be like. It's a bit like having 4 or 5 developers doing a building site. You can never get the true contact. It's odds and bobs, and sometimes it's not quite the right thing to do. I don't think it is. And in a place like that, you know, it's the North Petherton Gateway, by the way, not Bridgewater. You're in North Petherton there. You're not the Bridgewater Gateway, it's the North Petherton Gateway. In fact, I'll go back 7 or 8 years, and I fought to keep that field a green wedge between North Petherton and Bridgewater. But I lost the fight, so once I lose the fight, I've got to pick up and get the best of the local community I can. And sometimes, you know, it is difficult. It's you've not got an easy job in a planner, and there's so many people that they have to. We need houses. We need houses. How many people would like to pay over £1,000 a month rent? And you have no security at all at the end of the day. No security. It's just not on, and we've got to end that. Got to end that way, and probably.
Thank you, Alan. Councillor Brown. Over to Councillor Bruce, please.
Thank you. I'm really seeking some clarity in terms of confirming that I've understood this correctly. So we're talking here about 15 houses. So this is the previous application. There was an outline for 15 and a full for 346.
Yeah.
So these 15 are part of 10%. It's not 100%. 10% affordable housing across those 2 applications. Let me complete. I'm assuming from what I've read that these 15 are the off-site allocation for the Vistry development. I appreciate the work that's gone in by the affordable housing officer to improve the mix that's on site, and welcome seeing 1-bed flats in there. Badly needed, and that's really positive thing to see. I'm still kind of like, I'm wary about people referring to 100% affordable housing, because it looks to me as this is part of the 10%. So it's a low allocation of affordable housing. This is not a high allocation. There's also reference in this about the deed of variation removing the communal gardens. And I just want to confirm that's removing the communal gardens because they've been changed to private gardens. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think I just want to see confirmation really that I've understood correctly. And also when we come to the next part of this development, the remaining 10% of the affordable housing will be part of those 346 houses. And the distribution is going to be a bit more even, because I don't like to see the cluster of social housing like that. But like I said, I do appreciate the work that's gone in to improve that. I'm not against this in particular, but just wary about referring to 100% affordable housing. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I understand. So I wasn't involved in the Fish Street scheme when it was Botlock scheme as well, but I understand that the numbers have already been set in terms of the numbers that have been provided, and there was a viability assessment as part of that. Yeah. So, and the affordable housing officer who commented on this scheme was involved in those negotiations, so she is alive to all the issues. In terms, I'm trying to think if that answered all your questions. So there's the, in terms of phase 2, there's these 15 houses, and there was 36 houses also provided on the element of the scheme that had full consent. So the scheme that came to committee last month, and those are not clustered in the same way as perhaps this site is. And yes, the deed of variation relates to the amended layout on the full element of the scheme, because under the Botlock development, they had these communal gardens because not all the houses had private gardens, and because the layout's changed and they all have private gardens, that's been removed. Does that answer everything?
It does, thank you.
Okay, good.
Thank you, councillor Bruce. Any more comments from the floor? No? Okay. In which case, I will make a proposal to accept the officer's recommendation with this. Councillor Hendry? Oh. Plus the new LLFA condition, which we've made a note of, Millie?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. That's proposed by me, councillor Martin, seconded by councillor Hendry. If you're in agreement with that, please could I ask you to raise a hand? 6, 7, 8, that's 9 in favour. And any against, please? 1 against and no abstentions. No abstentions. That is passed. Thank you very much indeed. Okay. We have been going for 2 hours now while the room clears. Would you appreciate a 5-minute break? Okay, could I ask you to come back by 4:05, please?
This is a planning application that was deferred from a couple of cycles ago to allow members to undertake a member site visit. It was also then deferred for the second time to enable adequate notification to be provided to ownership of the lanes. This is a full application for the erection of a detached self-built dwelling together with associated vehicle parking and garden areas. The main considerations here relate to the principle of development, access and highway impact, character of the area and adjacent heritage assets, and residential amenity. The site is located within the settlement boundary, within the built-up area of the west side of Bridgewater. As you can see, it's accessed off a relatively long private lane off Durley Road, which leads down past approximately 10 dwellings to a small site at the bottom, and just shades aerial, which indicates the context of the site. You can just about see it within the red shade colouring. The development there, you can see leading down the lane are a number of detached properties, more modern housing development to the east, and to the south east there is a listed building, and to the northwest there's also a listed building. Now this proposal, as I said, is for a self-built dwelling. It's the 2-bed dwelling. This is the siting of it there. There's a little bit clearer layout plan. It indicates the 2 car parking spaces and additional drive area to be located in front of the dwelling, and the garden area to the rear. It would be finished in natural stone with clay tiled roofs with windows front and back and roof lights on the side. I'm going to show you some photographs now to provide the context of the site. Now this is approaching the site from the east, from Durley Road, into the access, which is the private drive into the lane. And this is me sitting at the access, leaving the site in full gear. looking both directions just to demonstrate the visibility at the access. And this is a view from the lane looking along the length of the lane to the end of the lane where the existing Grade 2 listed farmhouse is located at the end of the lane, and the site is actually to the right hand side of this photograph where my mouse is indicating. You can see that there. This is standing with the where you can see the just about to see the gates or the boundary wall which separates the Grade 2 listed building and this site. And the site, these photos were taken some time ago when I visited the site last year, where it's shown to be relatively overgrown. This is looking directly into the site with the existing natural stone boundary wall to the side here. There's some fencing to form the boundary at the end of the site and some banking along this elevation. I've got some clearer photographs because the site had been cleared previous to submitting this current application, and that's showing the existing listed building wall. And this is standing at the very end of the site, looking along the south boundary wall and looking at the entrance into the site. And then this photograph showed the view from within the site, looking along the northeast boundary. Now, in terms of principal residential development here, the site is within a settlement boundary. It's within the predominantly residential part of the town, and the principle of a self-build is considered to be acceptable. In terms of the impact on the character of the area and the heritage asset, the site is not within a prominent location. It is set at the end of a relatively long private drive, with the boundaries of the site already formed by the existing natural stone wall, the bank and fencing. The dwellings within the area do not have a distinct character. There's a mixed form, there's a diverse range of house types. They range from the two listed buildings to the southeast and southwest site, and then the detached dwellings of a mixed character along the lane itself. And then further to the east, as indicated previously, you've got the more modern housing development. The proposed house would be finished in natural stone with a clay roof. It would be set within the plot, resulting in a similar pattern of development of that of the other houses leading down the lane. Now, in terms of the impact on the setting of the Grade 2 listed building, Haygrove Farm, while it does not fall within its curtilage, it can, however, be considered to be part of its setting. Now, the application site was previously, many years ago, a barn, but all that remains of the barn is a high level natural stone wall, which now forms the boundary between the Haygrove Farm and the application site. This wall would remain. The Conservation Officer had stated that the principle of the proposal was generally acceptable and supported the retention of the boundary wall. However, the Conservation Officer had raised concerns that given the former agricultural use of the site and its location within the setting of the Grade 2 listed farmhouse, that the originally submitted design of the proposed dwelling was rather domestic in nature, and that it should reflect more so the agricultural character of the former barn to remain in keeping with the setting and not harm the significance of the farmhouse. The proposal was accordingly amended with the Conservation Officer's recommendation, which primarily included simplifying the fenestration details. Now, the site, while it was a former barn, is not within a rural setting anymore, but located close to other residential properties and is, as I've said, within the settlement boundary. Given the amended design of the proposed dwelling, it would contain an element of agricultural character. And given the detached nature of the site from the listed building, it is considered that the development would be acceptable. In terms of the potential impact on any trees, there are no significant trees within the site, but there are some significant trees within the adjacent gardens. Provided that the procedures set out in the arboricultural method statement are followed, the proposed development would have no adverse impact on the integrity of the adjacent trees. And there is a condition attached to the recommendation with regards to the arboricultural method statement. In terms of impact on residential amenity, the house is set within the centre of the site with windows forwards and back. Given the separation distances between the first floor windows of the proposed dwelling and the existing dwellings and gardens adjacent, the development would not lead to undue overlooking or loss of privacy. And in terms of the roof lights, they would be set within the building so that their lower sill level is approximately 2 metres above the first floor level, and therefore they're considered acceptable in terms of not allowing EV outlook from those windows. And with regards to the height and form of the building itself, given the separation distances with the neighbouring properties, the development would not cause visual domination or loss of light. That in terms of amenity for the proposed occupants of the new dwelling, there would be adequate garden space in order to provide residential amenity, and therefore considered in terms of amenity, the development would be acceptable. With regards to highway safety, the site is accessed via a private drive. The proposal includes 2 parking spaces together with a drive and adequate turning so that those vehicles can leave the site, leave the lane in forward gear. The lane itself is private, and at the entrance to the lane where it reaches the highway, the width is quite significant, and there would be space for more than 2 vehicles to sit at the entrance in order for there to be adequate space to pass. So it's not considered that there should be a case where vehicles cannot enter the highway, Quantock Road in forward gear. Quantock Road. Sorry, Durley Road. Correct. Thank you. In terms of, it's understood and recognised that the lane is private and it's relatively long, and then you cannot see the bottom of the lane when you're at the top of the lane at Durley Road. But in terms of its impact on the highway, we can really only consider how vehicles exit and enter the highway from Durley Road. In terms of the expectant number of vehicles, it's considered generally a rule of thumb is that there would be 4 to 6 vehicles or vehicular movements per day from a dwelling. And I counted 10 dwellings down that lane, and that's not counting the 2 at the entrance. Therefore, you could consider that there's 40 to 60 vehicle movements per day in that case. With 1 extra dwelling, this would lead to generally 4 to 6 extra movements. And given that limited amount of movements, we really could not consider that to be a severe increase or cause a severe impact. And therefore, in terms of highway safety, it's considered that the proposal is acceptable and complies with policy. In terms of ecology, this is proposed to be a self-build dwelling, and therefore, if it is approved, unilateral or Section 106 or a legal agreement would need to be entered into to ensure that it is occupied as self-build. Otherwise, biodiversity net gain would be required. And based on the recommended conditions on the agenda on this report, it is recommended to grant consent. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. On to public speakers. We have a statement from Heather Smith, which we will now have read out by my colleague.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to make this fair, I will time myself through another statement as well. Chair and members, planning inspectorate decisions mentioned here are those referenced in the information documents submitted by Mr. Saul Foster. We object to the application. The inspectorate have refused permission and supported refusal in 4 areas where a lane falls below the manual for streets past dimensions. It does for most of its length. So 2 cars cannot pass. Reversing into a public highway is the likely consequence. Reliance has been placed on a third-party lane driveways as informal passing places. Pedestrian conflict is foreseeable with no footway on the route. All of these conditions are present in Haygrove Lane and apply to this application. We believe the planning inspectorate view, as in Chapel Street and Hartcliffe Lane, is that the authority's highway safety concerns apply to private lanes. The lane fails Somerset Highway's own entrance width standard. No turning or passing places means reversing to the main road across the public footpath, a route to school where highways routinely install speed detectors to deter speeding, or down to the far end is inevitable. With residents on foot sharing the same lane, this was viewed as hazardous and permission refused in the Chapel Street decision. The angled lane entrance means an incoming vehicle cannot see an outgoing one until in the narrow section, resulting in reversing across the footpath. When turning right into the lane, visibility around the bend of Durley Road is limited. You cannot stop your turning. If a car emerges suddenly from the lane, non-resident cars regularly park on the side of the entrance, reducing to a single width as you turn in, particularly at school times. Planning inspectorate refusals at Hartcliffe Lane and Wyvern Farm held that private driveways are not reliable passing places and that reversing manoeuvres down the length of the roadway and at junctions create conflict with pedestrians and a safety issue. In the last 2 weeks, the recycling team and an ambulance were recorded lifting planters off of our driveway and reversing into our drive to turn round. Professional drivers actively avoiding reversing onto the main road or down the lane. In answer to just one more house will not make that much of a difference. The site is at the far end, so extra vehicles will fit the whole length of the lane. As in Hartcliffe Lane, where the inspectorate held, a single additional dwelling would result in material increase in lane traffic, what with reversing and manoeuvring identified as a safety risk. Bringing the lane up to highway standards requires work on land outside the applicant's control, and the lane owner has objected. It can't be assumed these access issues can be resolved. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Can I call Saul Foster to the front, please? Whenever you're ready, Mr. Foster.
Thank you. Chair, members of the committee, I object to this application on highway safety ground. The committee has identified access width passing places as the central issue. You've already received my written summary and President's document and will not repeat what you've read. I will give you 3 points that define this application. First, the entrance fails Somerset's own width standard. Somerset way standing advice requires 5 meters maintained over the first 6 meters of a multi-access dwelling. The width measured at 1 meter intervals are in your A4 summary. The lane meets the 5 meter standard only 3 of the 6 meters, and from 4 meters it falls progressively below Council's own published minimum. These are measurements taken across the made-up surface behind the footpath and not on the verges. The figures are not in dispute and cannot be improved without works on land the applicant does not own. Second, the geometry forces reversing onto Durley Road. Because the lane narrows below the passing width within 4 meters of the entrance, an entering vehicle that meets the oncoming vehicle has no room to pass. Visibility onto the lane is obstructed by a fixed fence on a third-party land at 12.8 meters. The entering driver commits to the turn before they can see the conflict. In practice, they reverse back across the footpath and onto Durley Road. This is exactly where the school children cross daily. This is the precise hazard the 5 meter standard exists to prevent. Third, the alternative is reversing along a 110 meter private lane. There are no formal passing places, no turning head at the bottom, and no footpath. The narrowest point measures 2.7 metres. The only claimed passing point at 2.8 metres is across a private driveway. The planning inspectorate ruled in April 2026 that the informal passing places on third-party land cannot be relied upon because there is no guarantee they will remain available. The principle applies directly here. On the question the committee raised about appeal risk, the inspectorate has dismissed appeals on materially better access conditions than this lane in the decisions in your President's pack. The refusal grounded in NPPF paragraphs 1.5b and 116, policy D14 and manual for streets is squarely within established practice. The greater risk is permitting the development that the inspectorate has on better facts refused. These problems cannot be cured by condition. The lane is owned by Summerfield Estates, who object and have granted no easements. I respectfully ask the committee to refuse permission. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We now have another statement, which will be read out by my colleague.
Thank you again, Chair. My wife previously addressed the committee regarding this application, and I appreciate that members subsequently visited the lane. Rather than repeating the points already made, I would like to provide an update from the perspective of someone who uses the lane every day. Firstly, I would respectfully ask whether any members have driven the lane since the site visit. Walking the lane undoubtedly shows its physical characteristics, but the problems experienced by residents arise when vehicles attempt to use it. The reality of driving it is very different. Since the committee last considered this application, there has been 2 further incidents which I believe are relevant. An ambulance became stuck whilst using the lane and required assistance to turn around. There was also an incident involving a refuse vehicle which resulted in damage to a neighbouring property. I understand an apology has since been issued. These are not isolated events, they are further examples of the difficulties larger vehicles experience when trying to access properties along the lane. As a resident, what concerns me most is that these incidences are becoming normalised. Residents have become accustomed to vehicles stopping, reversing, manoeuvring and relying on private driveways simply to make progress. That should not be considered normal or acceptable access. Every additional dwelling increases vehicle movements. More vehicle movements means more encounters between vehicles, more reversing, more turning, and more pressure on an axis that is already struggling to cope. As someone who lives with the consequences every day, I can say that the issues discussed at the previous meeting has not been improved. If anything, recent events have reinforced those concerns. I would ask members to give significant weight to the practical evidence of how the lane operates in reality, rather than relying solely on theoretical assessments of capacity and access. I therefore respectfully ask the committee to refuse this application and recognise that this access has reached a point where further intensification cannot be accommodated safely or sustainably. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Now, do we have online Abby Gouge Spencer?
Hello, committee. Yes, you do.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Gouge Spencer. When you are ready to speak, it starts and we will start the clock at this end. Whenever you're ready, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Firstly, thank you for your time. I appreciate the committee's consideration for this application. As you saw during your site visit, the land sits at the end of a private lane over which we have right of access. It was formerly used as a barn to store machinery and later became a place where children to explore while growing up at Haygrove Farm. The farm eventually collapsed. The barn eventually collapsed. Haygrove Farm was sold to the Wades in late 1980s and the Spencers retained the land the barn sat on and its right with the intention to one day build on the land. I have read the outline objections and understand the concerns raised. The objectors live in the recently built houses on the same lane, while the lane is a single track, as many residents access the road are. I do not consider this in itself a justified refusal for the application. Construction is also likely to improve improvements to the lower part of the lane, and this has not been properly maintained for many years by any of the residents or the owner. I also wish to address the objections raised by Mr. Holliday, a major homes development building firm himself. He first objected in July 2025 and later stated shortly after the application was due to be heard that he had not been properly informed. I understand why the council proposed the hearing to ensure that the correct process was informed. I understand why the council obviously postponed the hearing. However, I respectfully ask that the committee to consider the timing and the substance of the further objections, which was limited in detail. In my view, the concerns raised appear to reflect a neighbourly dispute rather than planning grounds, and I would justify refusal for the application. Regarding Summerfield Homes, the planning archive shows that permission was granted for 19A Durley Road in 2018 after Summerfield claimed ownership of the lane. They do not appear to have raised the same objections then, despite similar conditions, that the application was approved for a much larger residence than the one that we are actually proposing. Sorry, bear with me. Turning back to the application, the proposed property will not overlook neighbouring homes. The original barn will be retained, while much of the remaining structures has already been lost. I am not aware of any highway obligations. Ecology has requested that bat boxes and bird boxes, which are considered reasonable and expected conditions. On turning space, our deeds provide the rights of access over the area directly in front of the entrance of Haygrove Farm, and the application includes parking provisions. I do not believe the completed development will cause excessive long-term disruption, as this plot sits at the bottom of the lane away from any of the houses, with only Haygrove Farm beyond. Refuge and recycling collections already take place in the lane, so our development will not introduce any new service or increase the number of collection lorries. They already collect from Haygrove Farm directly at the bottom of the lane. Collections remain there and will do.
Wrap up soon, please.
Sorry. The
Can I
same
ask
with
you-
Royal.
Yeah.
Yep, sorry, emergency access should not be affected as there's no parking on the lane as it is. And I'd just like to thank you, the committee, for everybody in your time involved, key concerns, and shown why the proposal is modest, appropriate, and does not create any significant harm and should be approved.
Thank you very much indeed for that comprehensive report. Now, before we go on, I'd like to ask Emma Meacham, please, to speak. So she's here.
She's on.
Oh, online. Emma, are you there and are you able to speak on the highways matter? Oh, sorry. So Emma, I do apologise. I've skipped one. There's Jill as well. Councillor Slocum, or Jill in this case, Slocum, are you still there?
I am indeed, Chairman, I am indeed.
Okay, Jill, Councillor Slocum, I apologise. There's been some confusion over this and something that I'd like to highlight. So in this capacity, you are predetermined, but you're speaking regarding this. Can you bring Jill up on the screen? Sorry, 1 second, Jill.
That's okay.
Presentation.
Enterprise.
Spaceship.
Doesn't need planning for special.
There we are.
Oh.
So while they're doing that, Councillor Slocum, so the situation is that at the moment you're speaking regarding this application, but just to confirm, you won't be taking part in the discussion at the round table here, and you won't be a voting member. So you are just speaking on this application.
I am.
Okay.
I am.
And,
Is that okay now?
sorry, one more piece of advice I've just been given. Sorry, Jill. That once you have made your statements, we've been asked if you can leave the room, as it were, by leaving the meeting online. Thank you very much. And
That's okay. Thank you. I apologise, Chairman, for not being there today. As you know, I have personal reasons. So, but I just wanted to make the points, and I thank the previous speakers. As the ward councillor, this is a very, very difficult area. We have had terrible problems with the services going down the lane, the recycling and everything else. We've had to get very small vans down there. We have had neighbours have said that they've had damage where the recycling have had to turn around. And the main thing, I don't want to repeat what's already been said. So what I wanted to say was that there's nothing wrong. I don't disagree with the application. It's just the locality. When we had the last application down there, Somerset County Highways then said, Somerset Council said there would be no more development down on the lane because it had exacerbated, it was overdevelopment. And here we are again trying to shove in another house. And all I'm saying is there are added problems with this lane. It's not, when you go down there, and I have been down there, and it's extremely difficult to get back up if you can't turn around the bottom, which is where they do now. With a house on the bottom, I don't think they will be able to turn around very, very well. And I think what we need to be thinking about is not just about the house that's going to be there, it's the locality. It's the worry of Durley Road. Durley Road is a very, very significant road. It's very, very busy. And to try to get out and in there, that's not an easy one, as I don't know, because I have visited people down there. I think also by the two grade 2 listed houses that are so near, we need to think about that. We need to have that in mind. And I appreciate the sensitivity of this application with it. But I just want members to know that I wanted this refused, not because the application was awful, it's just because the locality. This is a really, really already difficult lane, and it has caused me as a councillor many, many problems. And I do understand people that live down there. So I just wanted to make that clear, Chairman, if I may, please.
Thank you, Councillor Slocum. I appreciate that. That was very efficient with more than a minute to spare. Is that all you have to say on the topic?
I think it's all been said. So I will now leave, Mr. Chairman. And do I come back for the other application, or do you want me to go completely now?
Yeah, we'll send you a message to pop back in.
Thank you very much.
What grounds does she have to leave? I'm sorry.
Yep. Thank you, Joe.
She's a member of this committee, but she's not here. She's attending remotely. If she was here in person, she's switched hats because she's declared an interest. So she's speaking not as a member of the committee. She's speaking in the same capacity as anybody else that's a public speaker. And because she's declared an interest, the councillor's code says that she needs to leave the room after she's had her 3 minutes of speaking. So that's why the advice is that she should leave the meeting for this item, and that's reflected in your constitution. And the only other thing I would say is, in case, before she goes, in case anybody's got any questions for her, because you sometimes ask speakers questions, don't you? Occasionally, not very often. But if you don't do that, that's fine. So the advice from me is legal advice to the committee, to the chair and to Councillor Slocum is that, and Councillor Slocum is agreeable to that. You said you're happy to leave the meeting. We'll send you a message when this item is finished.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Slocum. That was complicated. Emma, now I'll call you back. Thank you for being patient. We'd like you to speak on the highways question, please. Can we bring Emma up on the screen? And can you hear me, Emma?
I can, yes, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Now, Zach.
Oh, sorry, there was just some questions from or points made by members of the public in the speaking about highway safety, and there were particular concerns raised, or the two that I can think of were the suggestion that the width at the top is substandard, the width at the top of the lane, and also about reversing movements on Stirling Road. And so I thought it'd be useful if the highways officer could just potentially comment on those 2 points, noting that it is a private road, not a public highway. So it would just be useful just to get some flavour, albeit Shanta's already made some points on that.
Thanks, Zach. With the chair's permission, I'll give a brief summary generally, if it's okay, rather than just necessarily concentrating on those 2 points. As far as the Highway Authority are concerned, we only have a remit to consider the existing public highway, as opposed to any private lane. However, obviously highway safety does accord with private roads as well as it does with public. So that has been considered, and as Shanta in her presentation quite clearly said, the addition of 4 to 6 vehicle movements per day cannot be considered severe in terms of highway safety. And severe, I stress that word because that is the word used within paragraph 116 of the National Planning Policy Framework, where development can only be refused if the impact is severe. There is nothing available to me record-wise of personal injury collisions at the Durley Road access point, should we call it? So we've got no recorded personal injury collisions at that point, and that would include pedestrian versus vehicle as well as vehicle versus vehicle. It doesn't include any incidences where there are no injuries recorded. So there may well be local anecdotal evidence of bumper to bumper, but that wouldn't be recorded necessarily as if there were no injuries. The access point is within a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. Shanta's presentation included some fabulous photos that showed that the visibility at that point is great. Going more directly to the points raised by one of the speakers about the width of the access point, absolutely correct. If a new access point is created, we would like 5 meters for the first 6 meters. But that's for a new access point. This access point is an existing access point already serving circa 10 dwellings. And again, I refer back to the NPPF, the addition of 1 cannot be considered severe. The only other thing I would note is that the 4 to 6 vehicle movements from this 1 dwelling, generally speaking, will follow the ebb and flow of the vehicle movements from the existing dwellings. So we all go to work at roughly the same sort of time. We all come back from work at roughly the same sort of time. Obviously, there are exceptions to those rules with shifts or with potentially school pickup or those sorts of things, but generally speaking, the ebb and flow of traffic is similar. I think that might cover everything, but please do let me know if I'm incorrect.
Okay, that's very good, thank you. That covers every question we had with that. We did have the other question, which I actually, rather than me speak, should we go straight across to the floor, starting with Alistair, please?
Thank you, Chair. Planning North. This whole thing, I've got a lot of notes here about the actual house itself, to that side. There's been 3 meetings here and it's all about this lane, the information coming forward, everybody's getting confused. So I'm going to break this down into basic terms. I was on a site meeting with the case officer about 2 weeks ago. Stayed there for about 3/4 of an hour having a good look. Now, further to that, I went back myself on my own last week and I purposely drove down the lane and I spoke to the homeowner at the very bottom, one set of gates going through just so you can see that when you see my car was there. The way this has been explained to everybody is actually, it's complicated to say the least, but the lane we're talking about is about 40 meters long, goes down a slight incline, 1 house at the bottom and no more, that's it. Well, by the way, the average car movements for a 3-bedroom house is 4, so it's even less than 6. And that's for a 3-bedroom house, this is 2. At the bottom of the lane, if you just try and imagine for 1 second, it's like an L shape. So the new proposed house would be in on the L, right, and out of the way of the existing property. There is no need for something called a passing place. That is just ridiculous, absolutely absurd. There's no pinch points, no passing places needed, nothing whatsoever. And I said 40 meters, which is nothing at all. If 1 car was coming out of the existing house and somebody wanted to come out of the new house, they would be parked nose to nose and you can see each other. One would go up the lane, the next one would follow, and likewise coming back down. There is no problem that cannot be overcome here, absolutely nothing. And if everybody else went on a site visit, which I don't intend to vote for anyway, if everybody else went there, you'd see exactly what we're talking about. The problem that everybody's trying to create and talk about and mind about, it's absolute nonsense. There is no problem. Now, I had a lot of notes here about this property and the house itself, but I'm just going to leave all that because nobody's interested really if we're talking about this lane. At this minute in time, you can forget all that, all this nonsense about passing places, etc., etc. It's absolute nonsense. 2 site visits. One, I drove down the lane. One, I backed up the lane. Somebody mentioned it, an Amazon vehicle before. Who cares? If an Amazon vehicle is stuck, it's up to the driver. He didn't get stuck because of any bends in the road, because it was too narrow, simply because he got stuck, so saying, and drove back up. An ambulance would easily get down that road, easily, because this track, I drove down it myself, and there's no doubt in my mind that an ambulance would get down here easily. The new property at apparently is going to have 2 parking spaces off the lane, which they can turn around and come back out in a forward gear. It's a really good break all down. What else can you ask for? There's nothing else you could ask of somebody to make this viable. And if they get legal access, that's nothing to do with this application here today. We're doing a planning application, nothing to do with the road. But I assure you, if you went on a site visit, which you're not going to do, you would see for yourselves that this whole debate, the whole discussion about lane is utter waste of time nonsense. For now, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hendry. I'm looking for further comments, first from Councillor Ferguson, then to Councillor Smedley, please.
Just to follow up a bit from Councillor Hendry, it's from my understanding as well from what the highways officer said, our only consideration as a planning committee via the private element of the lane is safety potentially. I don't even know if that's specifically a planning consideration in and of itself. Our only concern therefore is the access, and it's been defined to us that the access is legal. That's the only way, that's the only relationship we have, highways relationship we have with this planning application. Surely if the private lane is safe and the access is standard, it's not how we make a new access, but as it is, it's standard. Then I think we just resign, we're going to have to resign talking about the highest issue at all, because it's just not part of the consideration we can have in terms of issues of passing or anything but to do with that, because it's a private lane. So in that tone, I propose we go along with the officer's recommendation, because every other element of the planning application seems to be, to me at least anyway, well standard.
So is that a proposal to accept the officer's recommendation?
It is.
It is. So it's a recommendation from Councillor Ferguson. Hendry? Sorry, Councillor.
More than happy to second it. Absolutely more than happy. Like you talked about.
And that's seconded by Councillor Hendry. Thank you for that. Gentlemen, do we have, we have Councillor Smedley to speak, please.
When this was raised at the previous committee, I was minded to object to this. I went on the site visit that we had. I was late. I didn't go with the group. I went on my own later. So I have been up and down that road. Also worked as a delivery driver for 40 years. Of course, there's any road you can get up and down, but not some you want to. And stuff like places like this are not good in that respect. And the key aspect with the highways is the access onto Derby Road. It's on the brow of 2 hills. The visibility isn't great, and the site as you come onto the road isn't great either. Very close to school. As has been mentioned, it's a public footpath with lots of kids that go along it. Has also been mentioned it is overdeveloped for the area it is. So I would have proposed objected to this as I did last time. As a proposal has been made to accept, I'm going to vote against this.
Noted. Thank you very much indeed. That's appreciated. I'm looking for further comments on this. Councillor Grimes, please.
Thank you, Chairman. A question really. The wall that's on the listed building, is the wall actually listed?
That's I didn't consider. Can we put that to Councillor?
Yes. It is not considered to be listed on the listing for the main farmhouse, but it's considered be able to do works, so you'd consider it as such because it forms the curtilage.
My reason for that was who is responsible for maintaining the side of the wall where the new property is going to be, and how far is the wall from the building?
Yeah.
So. Sorry, Chair, we're just trying to get up the diagram that shows the elevation and the distance.
That's fine.
Although it doesn't show the actual specific measurement from the
Somebody gives an idea then.
Yeah.
Thank you. Should take it.
Yeah, as you can see now, I haven't marked it as a measured distance.
The elevation would be better if you have the elevation.
Yeah, so, you can see it in relation to the house itself. I would say it's not quite door width.
Can you just highlight on the
Sorry,
thing where we're
it's a
looking?
bit tiny on screen. Yeah, so we're looking here, the distance between the wall and the building.
Could I come back, Chairman, please?
Yeah.
It was my reason for asking that question was if it was listed in any way, who would be responsible and would they have a right of way to actually go round there and repair that wall? If it was just a normal wall, it wouldn't be an issue, but if it is listed in any way, that could be an issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grimes. Do we have any guidance on that?
I think I'd just say they're in different ownerships already, whether there's a house there or not. So that would be a simple matter to get right of access. But the building is set away from the listed wall. So I'd be more concerned if it was actually adjoining the wall, which could involve Party Wall Act, but which is separate from that legislation, as you know. But this is set away from the wall. So if there were any works that would need to be done to the curtilage listed wall, listed by virtue of curtilage, that an access is needed, that would be a matter for the whoever owns the wall to agree with the owner of the adjoining site.
Okay.
I don't know whether the wall is within the application site or adjoins it, and that's the problem. But it's the same either way in terms of ownership.
Okay, thank you.
Does that help? Yeah.
Yep.
I'm looking for further detail on this because, Councillor Bruce, please.
Yeah, sorry, I was just curious, councillor Slocum did mention her comments about the last application on that lane, about the council saying that no more development would be taking place on that lane. I just wanted to know, is that something that we have to discount? Does that exist? Is it anecdotal? Just if anybody's actually looked into that, thank you.
I would say that unless there was a legal agreement that said that there'd be no more development there, it may have been a comment that was said at the time, but you have to consider each application on its own merits. So I don't know if that was said or not, but it doesn't have any weight unless the solicitor's going to tell me different. That comment wouldn't have any weight in planning terms, because we're duty bound as a council to consider applications that are validly made to us. So I don't know that, but I don't know who said that or in what context.
But you're confirming that it wasn't investigated as to whether there was a legal agreement that was the case?
Well, there is no legal agreement. I don't know. Do you know which site it was? No, we're not aware, I'm afraid.
I certainly haven't seen anything to that effect, and I would agree that unless we have it in a document in front of us, then it wouldn't be something that we could consider. Yeah, we're going to go to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was involved in that planning application, Councillor Slocum, I think, a few years ago, and I can't recollect anything like that being said. No, I was on the site visit and to talk about the access onto the main road at the top of the lane, well, really, well, there's hundreds of thousands of places with far worse accesses and that. I don't know why we're discussing anything like that, to be honest. And as to the lane, well, it's like most lanes, you've just got to get on, and there's always pulling places. You've got to get on. Live and let live. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Live and let live.
Live and let live.
Wise words, wise words. Councillor Ferguson.
This in a way slightly goes against my own proposal, but did you mean here, Jill's put into the notes here, and it might be what you were talking about earlier. There was actually county highways agreed at the last application, it would not exceed this in the future. With our own department, that makes that. Again, just to, not to reverse your point and speak on your behalf, but have we said anything legally binding in any way? Because Jill mentioning here, sorry, councillor Slocum is mentioning here of our own highways when we were a county.
Where have you mentioned that?
I could have misread it, I could have.
Where have you got the note from?
7.1 consultees. This lane was just before homes, is now vastly, and county highways agreed at the last application that it would not exceed this in the future.
I think the only comment I would make through you,
Or
Chair.
did that need to be evidenced as well?
Well, no, I think the comment I would make is that, and this isn't going against our colleagues in the highways team, but they ultimately, we're the local planning authority, not the highways authority. So whilst they might have said that they would object to further additional dwellings on that lane, they're not objecting this time.
Yeah.
So I think that's all I can say on that.
That makes perfect sense. Sorry
Thank you.
to speak on your behalf.
No, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, anybody coming back on that? Because we have a proposal on the table if we have no further comments. I'm looking around the room and not seeing any further comments, so I shall go to a vote then. The proposal is that we accept the officer's recommendation. To that end, could all those in favour please raise your hand? 7, that's 7 in favour. Those against, please. 3 against with any abstentions? No abstentions. And that is passed. Thank you all for going through that very sticky application. But for a year, we debated that. And I will go straight on with your kind consideration to agenda item number 9, 37 North Street, Bridgewater. Oh, yes. How are we sending you the message? Let's see. Oh, okay. We're going to go straight back then to item number 9, 37 North Street, Bridgewater. Who's taking this one, please? Dean is taking this one. Whenever you're ready. Yeah, I'm just going to wait for Jill to come back into the room, Dean. Mr. Kitchener, sorry. Yeah.
Thank you.
Here she is. Okay, that's lovely. Whenever you're ready, mate.
Okay, so yeah, the application for a change of use of HMO, so housing multiple occupation, from 6 occupants to 8, at 37 North Street. It's before the committee as the recommendation is contrary to the town council's view. So we are just on, it's in Bridgewater, just on the outskirts of the town centre. So North Street is just indicated by this sort of different marker here. And then it's part of the terrace plot, so you can see the red outline, long thin plot, very long garden, it's building at the end, it's part of that row along there, and the block plan shows it in a little bit more detail. This is, so the property benefits from a local development certificate for its use as a 6-bed housing multiple occupation. The floor and elevation plan show the internal layout, which will be used as per its existing lawful use as a 6-person housing multiple occupation. So ground floor, you've got living accommodation, so living kitchen spaces, and then you've got occupied bedrooms at first and in the loft space. And then the proposed plans are for the formation of 2 additional rooms at ground floor. So that's providing rooms from subdivision of part of the space, giving them ensuite bathrooms, and then the living space is within the existing long, primarily single-story projection that exists to the rear of the property. So sort of open plan living, kitchen, dining area. So main considerations, principal, visual impact, amenity, parking. The scheme, as we understand it, is going to accommodate students who attend the college, sort of study in conjunction with the sort of Hinkley programme. It is a site that's on the edge of the town centre, so what we would consider to be one of the most sustainable locations in the former Sedgemoor area, where you can walk to the town within a 5-minute walk to most services and facilities. So in our view, there'll be no objection in principle for a larger HMO in this location. In terms of visual considerations, there are no external alterations and therefore no changes to the character of the street. In the absence of such external changes, we officers would not consider this to amount to overdevelopment. I know that's the view of the town council. In terms of residential amenity considerations, so most bedrooms benefit from ensuite bathrooms, each has their own windows and providing adequate natural light, very large open plan living and kitchen space, and a very long, large rear garden. On parking, the property at the moment has no dedicated parking. It's parking free at the minute. There's I think yellow lines along North Street. And then at the rear there's sort of an access lane, but there's no dedicated parking for this scheme at all. I have to acknowledge that. Schemes with little or no parking can be acceptable. We're mindful of that, where they benefit from good access to services, i.e. when we can be in sustainable locations and given the edge of the town centre, that is our view here. I mentioned the property has a large garage to the rear. It's not one that can accommodate vehicles, and I'll show you the photo so you can understand why. It's plenty big enough for bicycle storage. What we're looking at is a modest increase in occupancy from 6 to 8 people, similar to applications for nature we've looked at times before. And we have to, as officers, consider the additional movements that was associated with that level of increase. Going from 2 to 8 would be considered modest in scale and not unacceptable. The applicant had provided management plans saying how the day-to-day arrangements for occupancy, matters such as waste management, maintenance, handling of noise and social behaviour complaints would be managed by them and that is proposed to be secured as a condition attached to the permission. Just want to show you some photos really, just get a sense of terrace property. The property is undergoing renovation works as part of converting it to HMO at the time of my visit. So you can see the property is effectively being stripped back to its sort of bare walls, as you'll see from these images. So this photo here just shows the long single-story area which will comprise the living space. You can see the very long rear gardens. There's plenty of outdoor space. You can see the dormer which forms part of the first floor accommodation, and then looking out from that said dormer back over the garden to the rear, you get a sense of the size of the external space associated with the property. This here is the garage sort of building at the rear, so you can see plenty big enough. It's accessed down this lane here, and it's like the end building, so that's it. Sort of it has a pedestrian access. Slightly unusual arrangement when you get to the end of the lane, pedestrian access, and then you sort of turn in and you walk into here. So you can go in there, turn left, but there is no parking here. There's unallocated parking on the lane at the rear, but I'd say there's only a handful of spaces, and I imagine limited capacity for additional. I've put these photos in just for context because the applicants have a couple of these properties that are also rented out to students in the locality. So one is on the north side, on the opposite side of North Street, and there's an application that came before the committee about 3 years ago. It was also for a change from 6 to 8, where similar issues came up. Also being occupied by students in association with the provision at Hinkley. Similar level of accommodation in terms of that open plan living accommodation provided at the rear. And this is the sort of finish that the applicants are expecting to provide in terms of units once they've finished with their renovation work. So that's just to give a bit of context. And our recommendation is grant planning permission. Happy to talk through the issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dean. We have one speaker on this. Kieran Goldie. Mr. Goldie, if you could Make sure your mic's turned on and whenever you're ready. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Kieran and I'm speaking on behalf of Hinkley Homes, professional co-living operator with an established track record in the professional management of high quality HMO accommodation. This application seeks to increase the existing HMO at 37 North Street from 6 bedrooms to 8, and I would like to briefly set out how the property will be managed to the highest possible standards. All 8 bedrooms will exceed the minimum space standards set out by the local authority and HMO licensing requirements. Every room will be accommodated to at least a double bedroom, wardrobe, drawers and desk. We operate a strict 1 tenant per room policy without exception. Communal spaces, including a well-considered kitchen, dining area and lounge, will be retained and remain fit for the purpose. The property will benefit from any energy efficient heating, high quality insulation, motion sensor lighting and additional soundproofing throughout, ensuring a comfortable living environment. Hinkley Homes manages this property using the NRLA guided process and Coho property management platform. All tenants receive tenancy agreements, full documentation prior to move-in, clear contact details for the licence holder. Compliance records are maintained to the highest standard, including gas safety, electrical certification, fire alarm testing, emergency lighting, and fire risk assessments. Maintenance is also managed through a proactive quarterly inspection programme alongside a 24/7 on-demand triage service, meaning issues are resolved quickly and with minimal disruption to the residents. All prospective tenants undergo comprehensive affordability checks, referencing and criminal record screening, and their approach actively addresses the housing needs within the Bridgewater area while contributing positively to the local community. We treat our tenants as housemates, not just occupiers, and our 100 plus 5-star Google reviews reflect that commitment. Noise and antisocial behaviour policies are embedded in our tenancy agreements. Immediate neighbours have direct contact details with the property manager, and any complaints are documented and retained for 3 years. It's worth noting that Hinkley Homes was nominated the 2025 HMO Award for the best HMO conversion and also won the HMO Property of the Year award at the National Property Investor Awards. This application represents a continuation of that same standard of delivery. We are confident this proposal will meet and exceed all local authority requirements, provide much needed quality accommodation for our local community, and will be managed with the professionalism that this committee would expect. We respectfully ask the committee to support this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goldie. I appreciate that. And with no other speakers, I open it up to the floor. Councillor Clayton.
Thank you. It's a bit basic, but what is the provision for refuse, wheelie bins, recycling on this particular slide?
Thank you. We have a document for that, do we not? Give me a second to find it.
So there's yes, it's in the management plan, which I need to get the hand up, and I haven't got it in front of me without. I might spend a bit of time trying to see as an attachment. But the one thing I would say is, unlike some properties that are more constrained, this does benefit from a very large the outbuilding at the back. So there is actual dedicated and more than adequate space for storage of wheelie bins, where they can be moved, to the public highway on the day of collection. I know that some terrace properties don't benefit from that. So I'm happy to take some other questions. We can double check what the arrangements are in the management plan, but certainly that's what I'd say as an interim.
Thank you. So we'll wait for an update on that one. But if there, just as a question, really, if there's space for storage at the back, but the refuse is collected at the front, I don't know how they would go about that, but that's a question for somebody else, I guess. Alan.
To me, Mr. Chairman, it looks a lot better than the average, if I'm honest with you. And I've had no problem in supporting this motion and supporting officer.
Is that a proposal for you?
Proposal, yeah.
We have a proposal to accept from Councillor Bradford. Ron?
Is there any chance of putting up the plan again of the layout of the proposed
floor plan?
Yeah, floor.
yes, that one.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, that's okay. I thought one of the basements didn't have a window on it, that was all. No, I'm quite happy with second.
And seconded from you. Thank you very much. So we have a proposer and a seconder on that item. We have a question from Councillor Smedley, please.
I would have proposed objecting to this, rejecting the proposal. Adding extras to HMOs is rather typical and adds to overdevelopment. The back area to that particular terrace was a council yard many years ago and is currently being overdeveloped. I would have said this adds to that, but the main effect of HMOs in areas such as that is fly parking elsewhere and nearby, and that would affect, say, Camden Road. In this case, I think that therefore does put a burden on the if they could restrict to the 6 beds as they've been planned originally, and not to increase it, it would have been less of a problem. But I think in this case, I would support what the town council is saying about objecting on overdevelopment, parking, the change of the character of the area.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bruce.
Thank you. It's a case of deja vu. We've been here before. And I'm, I appreciate we don't have, so the objections that were sent in, one of the neighbours was like, what, this is a HMO? This was a residential property. So it's being converted, but it was being used. I appreciate there was permission, or it can become a HMO without going to application. But the neighbours were not aware of that at the time of this application going in. It was a use of the residential property by a family before it became a 6-person HMO. Let me just finish on that one. And then we don't have the power to stop them converting it to a 6-bed HMO. I appreciate that, but we do have the power to try to curtail the effects or the damage that these can cause. I'm going to suggest that we do. I don't know what the process is here actually, but I think we can have a second proposal, which would be to second Councillor Smedley's proposal to reject it, based on the reasons that we gave last time. I can read out the reasoning if necessary in terms of the reason why we rejected it, but the back of those properties, the back of number 37, there is no parking there because there's a warehouse at the back there, and it's the end of that lane. There's very few parking spaces. Those properties that are already there are already struggling with the parking. There's double yellow lines on the road at the front. There is no parking available already in that area. And I know that we're the same as the last application. It's just 2 more people, it's just 1 more property, but you've got to look at it within the context. And the context is that it's already at the limit, over the limit, I would say, because the residents are already struggling to get in and out in the mornings to get to work and everything. It's just a disaster there. So to put 2 more extra people on there, we as a committee will be choosing to do that. We don't have the power to stop the 6-bed, but we do have the ability to say, no, that's too much. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But just as regarding the protocol, so Councillor Smedley, you put forward a proposal to object, which you are happy to second, I understand, right? So the protocol is we've had a proposer and a seconder. When we come to the end of this discussion, we will take the votes in the order that they were accepted. So the vote to approve the application will come first. If that application fails, then we go to the second vote. So that's how that one would work. Zach, you wanted to speak, please?
Yeah, just a point of clarity, and Councillor Bruce has already acknowledged this, but there was a question about not being an HMO and it being residential use. But just to remind members that under the Town and Country Permitted Development Order, General Permitted Development Order, a change of use from a residential dwelling house to an HMO that's got no more than 6 persons living as a single household. That's within a different use class. It's within use class C4, but that is a permitted change from a residential dwelling house. So that's why we're saying that the 6 unit HMO is permitted. I was going to say, it's only two more people, but at the risk of being jumped down by Councillor Bruce, I won't mention that. The one thing I would say is, you know, we as officers, we do consider these very carefully. We know the sensitivity, and we have refused applications where we've had real concerns, and we were successful on appeal on one. It was one of Hinkley Homes ones where they were proposing a 10-bedroom HMO last year, and we did look at that, and we felt in that context that would have a significant impact on the character of the area and on neighbour amenity. In this instance, we don't feel quite the same. You've got a much better situation in terms of amenity space for occupiers. But I do take the point that with all of these, there are sensitivities in the local area. So it's not for me to say anything more. You're the decision maker, not me.
Chair, might I come back?
Yes, if you'd like to come back first, then we'll go to Sonia.
Yeah, just to reinforce the point, it's two more, but it's actually eight. Well, it's a number more because it's gone from a family use to a 6-bed to an 8-bed HMO. So it is more than two.
Granted, that's a point well made and well taken. Thank you. We're going to go to our legal rep, and then I understand we have Jill online with a question. So you first.
And Councillor Bruce, you said twice that you can't stop this, and to clarify, the application has changed the use from 6 to 8. So that's the application that is before you and that you've got to consider. And you do have the option. You have the option to approve and you have the option to refuse. So I don't understand why you said twice we can't stop this, because that's what you're deciding now.
We can't stop it changing from a family use to a 6-bed HMO.
No, but you said I thought you were saying that you can't stop this application.
No. What that's my point was, we can't stop it going to a 6-bed. We do have the power, in my opinion, to stop it from becoming an 8-bed.
It already is a 6-bed, isn't it?
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
I think we have an answer on the refuse and recycling question that was asked before. Is that okay?
It is. Before you do that one, can we go to Jill online and then come back to you?
Of course.
Thank you. Councillor Slocum, please.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to say that obviously it is a 6-bed already, so we are only adding 2 more. But the problem I think is, could I ask the question that, is there any proviso about parking? Because we change these homes, and I know they're much needed, and I know they'll be well looked after under EDF's knowledge. But the problem is the parking really does become a major problem. It really does exacerbate existing residents around. And I just wish that we could, I know this is probably not sensible to say this, but I do wish some of the HMOs, people that went in there, didn't have cars. It would make life so much easier. And I just wondered if there could be a really strong emphasis on the fact that the parking, if they all come with cars, that's 8 more cars, or obviously 2 more cars, the already 6 cars. And it really must be taken seriously. Nothing against the application. It'll improve the area. I'm not worried about that. It's honestly the cars. And I really think some people should take this seriously, because councillors and other people and residents are left with what the problem is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Slocum. Just to go back a bit on the application, this one is aligned with the college, which is as a proxy for EDF, but this is for, as far as I understand it, students.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Slocum. Zach, your answer.
Oh, well, I was going to defer to Dean, actually, if that's okay. Thank you.
We've got the management details up, just in terms of what it says on waste. It says they will provide suitable bin stores to house wheel bins and recycled containers in the grounds of the property. Housemates will be issued with details of refuse store arrangements, including collection date for refuse, recycling and green waste, and how to present their waste for collection. A schedule of waste, recycling / collection date to be posted on notice board, and housemates made aware of responsibility for proper disposal. As a backup, weekly cleans of communal areas ensure that any excess rubbish is removed by the cleaning team at least once a week. We ensure that attention is brought to the housemates to maintain front and back external areas in really good state and free of rubbish or other unsightly objects. Cleaning team also monitor the exterior and remove any excess rubbish at least once a week to maintain the character of the building. So that's what we've got in terms of waste. I don't think it necessarily specifies whether the bins can be stored either at the front or the back per se. And I suspect it under the current arrangement, they could be stored in either place in its operation as a house. You know, they may well choose to store it at the premises, perhaps for convenience. So that offers maybe some assurance just in terms of the management and maintenance arrangements to try and keep at least reasonably tidy. We know that they've got space for the bins. I wouldn't say that they'll definitely put the bins at the back because that may not be.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. We have been over this. Yeah, no.
Where have you been?
That was entirely without foundation. So I have two proposals on the table. One, to accept the officer's recommendation. If we have no further notes and queries, I will take a vote on that, please. Would all those in favour of accepting the officer's recommendation to grant this permission, please raise a hand. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 6 in favour. Those against, please. 1, 2, 3, 4 against, and any abstentions? No abstentions. That is passed. Thank you very much indeed. And with that, thank you everybody online. That is we have the appeal. Oh yeah, we're not going to forget the appeal. We've been waiting for that. That's the last application. The last thing on the agenda is for us to go through the appeals received. If you are leaving us now, thank you very much indeed for your attention and for being patient with me. We don't stop recording yet, do we? No, okay. So over to you then, Mr. Elwood, for the.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, John.
We all know I'm a big show off, so I need somewhere to find it. Anyway, there's no appeal decisions. That doesn't mean there haven't been any received, but they were received after the agenda was published. So yeah, nothing to report in terms of decisions, but we do have 2 new appeals. Obviously, they're listed on page 129 of the report, but just to give you a bit of background as to what the reasons for refusal were and what we're relying on. I believe they were both delegated refusals. So the first one, 172582 at Bradley Cross Lane, Bradley Cross Cheddar, was change of use to a dog walking area, and it has like a boundary fence around it, so it would define that. There were 3 reasons for refusal on that. Firstly, it was felt that it would conflict with the council's countryside policy because it's introducing an employment use without any justification there. Secondly, there were highway concerns about the fact that it hadn't been demonstrated that safe and suitable vehicular access could be achieved on the site. And then thirdly, it's within the national landscape there. And it was felt that, you know, introducing this dog walking area with a big high fence around it would harm the landscape character, and that would be contrary to policy D19 of the local plan. So policy CO1, highway safety, and policy D19 predominantly. And we'll wait to see what the inspector says. I believe that's a written representations one. The second one relates to a site at west of Batch Road, Puriton in Bridgewater, and it was a change of use to a traveller site. And we are conscious that there's already a traveller site there, and that was put forward by the applicant's agent was, oh, there's already one there. But I think you heard an appeal decision a couple of months ago where we were taking a harsher line on gypsy and traveller sites within flood zones 3A and B, which those are the highest risk of flooding. And that's in accordance with details we've agreed with the Environment Agency, who are very concerned. Effectively, flood zone 3A is the second, apart from the functional floodplain, that's the highest level of flood risk. And what we noted and what I mentioned in terms of the recent appeal, which was dismissed, was that mobile homes are highly vulnerable uses, actually more vulnerable than bricks and mortar. And so there's an in principle objection in the NPPF says we shouldn't be allowing highly vulnerable uses within flood zones at high risk of flooding. But we also then look at, okay, in the event there was a flood, would there be a reasonable and safe means of escape? In this instance, we didn't feel there was any safe, satisfactory means of escape. The road, the track that leads to the road regularly floods and is underwater. And so it's a question of the risk to life, actually. And so we're taking a consistent approach. And although there is already a gypsy and traveller site there, we can't do anything about that. But we have to look at what the government says about health and safety, and we shouldn't be introducing highly vulnerable uses within areas at high risk of flooding. I have looked at the appeal statement. Their argument is, oh, this could be a personal permission or a temporary permission, but the weather doesn't pay any attention to whether it's a personal permission or a temporary permission. Although obviously flood risks is based on 1 in 10 year, 100 year, 1 in 1,000 year events. That doesn't mean it happens every 1,000 years. It's an average. It could happen tomorrow. So that was why that was refused. But we'll wait the outcome with interest, because there have been appeal decisions that have been allowed. Sorry.
Let's ask a question.
Please do, yes.
It's saying flood zone 3A, which, yeah, okay. When was the last recorded flood there? You know?
I don't know.
No, I don't know either.
No, I don't know. But that's, I mean, that comes back to my point that that if it's basically it's based on the chances of a 1 in 10, 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000 event. That's how they work out the flood zone. But these are all set by the Environment Agency, and the precautionary principle that they apply is not to allow vulnerable or highly vulnerable uses. So if this was a house, we would be saying we shouldn't be allowing it within flood zone 3A, and this is even more vulnerable, being not bricks and mortar. But I don't know the specific answer to when it last flooded. So. There will be records. The Environment Agency have records, but I don't know this.
That was the last of the. It's really interesting. The second time in one day that my thoughts have turned back to my time in education. What we're talking about there is called the gambler's fallacy, where you have, if you say it happened once in 1,000, if you say 1,000 coin tosses, if you did 999 at heads, you'd expect the next one to be tails, but it doesn't work that way. That's the gambler's fallacy. I guess it's the same with flooding.
I think there should be an insurance salesman.
I think there should be an insurance salesman.
Councillor Martin, if you did 999 heads in a row, I'd be massively.
Yeah. That's why I don't gamble. Right, thank you very much, everybody, for your kind consideration and indulgence today. I appreciate it. A long and complex meeting. I look forward to the next one. Thank you.